Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. Happy Labor Day out there to all of you listening. If you're listening on Monday, if you're listening later in the week, that means you are that much closer to NFL kickoff, that much closer to a Bills game. Luka, football is in the air. It is the best time of year.
Oh, this is fantastic. I even put out tweets from my personal account, something I don't do very often, just because I was so hyped about Josh Allen living in misery as Wyoming got absolutely throttled by Arizona State last night, or
Yeah.
last night being Saturday night. Um, what a way to start the football season for myself, enjoying that beautiful masterpiece. And then it's as you said, when anyone's listening here, if you listen on Monday, thank you so much. Enjoy your Labor Day. If you're listening later in the week, at this moment of where I'm sitting, I am jealous of you. I am envious of you because you are closer to football Sunday than the way I am talking right now and where I am currently. I'll be there with you in live time, but it's unbelievable to think that we've gotten through the dog days of the offseason. We've gotten through the horribleness that is preseason football, Josh. Now the games are going to matter, and it's exciting times.
It's exciting because the games are coming up, and Luca, it's exciting because our favorite show, maybe outside of the live draft show, is the show we are going to do tonight. It is the Bills and NFL season prediction show. And look, we are not just going to go through and, say, hey, the Bills are going to go 12-5. And then like, all right, Josh Allen's going to go to the Pro Bowl. Like, no. We dig a lot deeper on this show. We are going to go through and we are going to pick every Bills game, win or lose. Luca's going to pick his. I'm going to pick mine. We're going to add it up at the end. We're going to see what the records are. But as we go through, we're going to ask some very important questions about these Buffalo Bills, as well as some questions about the teams that are in the way of the Buffalo Bills. Luca and I have done quite a bit of research for this show. So we're going to get into the wide receivers. We're going to get into Josh Allen. We're going to get into the coaching situation. We're going to get into the Jets and the Dolphins. So this is a episode that I hope you will enjoy. I certainly enjoy recording it every year. And I think it is the perfect episode just to get you right into the mix of the NFL season. And Luca, I will say one lesson I learn every year when we record this episode. It's so easy to get lost in your own team, whether it's things you're excited about, but most importantly, this time of year, I think people tend to focus on things that they're not excited about. Like, oh, we have a weakness here, or we have a weakness there. And then when you start looking under the hood of these other teams and you remind yourself, there really is no perfect team in the league.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in your own team. It's easy to, like you said, get concerned about all those holes, those question marks, whatever it is, the backup quarterback, the safety position, things that are topical to the Bills, because you're consumed by your own fandom to the point where you want to almost have the explanations of where faults may come and so on and so forth. But when you really look at it with a broader scope, look at the league across, everyone has their own issues. Everyone has their own concerns. And the Bills have been able to do something to bring it back where it's like they've sustained success through, a multitude of things over these past years that great organizations generally remain great for a reason. And I believe it doesn't feel like it's going out on a reach by saying the Bills are one of those great organizations currently in the landscape of the NFL that if you were to have a situation as we will go through these games and you really feel like it's a coin flip and so on and so forth, I do believe that coin might lean towards the Bills just because they've been there and done it a little bit more than who they're looking at across the field. Now, they haven't won it all, of course. They've had really heartbreaking playoff defeats, in the past few years. But overall, at least they've gotten to those points. They've experienced defeat even in a multitude of ways where you would like to hope that they'll learn from those experiences. But at the end of the day, it's like when you talk about the Dolphins haven't won the division in over 20 years, and you talk about the Jets haven't made the playoffs in general in over 10 years, all these things come up where it's like the Bills are above all of those standards to start. So from there, you would like to believe that success will continue because they can lean on prior success in the past. And it's one of those things that we do have our own issues when it comes to the Bills, and our fandoms and our question marks are there. But overall, everyone else has their own questions. Everyone has their own concerns. Things pop up all the time that it's not like the league is just, hey, everyone's at full health, everyone's doing great, and the Bills are the only one dealing with adversity. It's like, no, everyone generally has their own situations going on that it's something to remember as we're walking through this. It's a great kind of refresher, Josh, in my eyes, where it's like, okay, we're talking about week 7 against the Titans, or we're talking about week 8 away at the Seahawks. What does that matchup look like? What are the Seahawks dealing with right now in the preseason or going into the regular season? And how is that potentially going to shape up by the time the Bills come to town in Seattle, so on and so forth? That I love this. I love it. It kind of gives you a broad perspective on the league as a whole. It makes you think about everything that goes into it when it comes to the record at the end of the season and what it took to get there.
Yeah, and I think it's a healthy exercise, and it's one that's useful in a lot of ways, especially for the old mental health when you start feeling down about your team. So as we go along here, I'm going to be pausing the show and asking Luka a series of questions that he does not know are coming. I think Luka works best in these environments when I spring questions on him. And we're going to start right off, Luka, with one of those questions before we even get to
Ooh.
our week 1 prediction of Bills Cardinals.
Ooh.
When the final chapter of the story of the 2024 Bills is written, Luka, what will we be saying about the 2024 Bills wide receiver group?
Ooh, about the wide. I was thinking it was going to be a broad team question. I will say putting that little wide receiver group in there was fun. I will believe that what we're going to be saying about this receiver group overall is how it will still feel like that true one will be nice. But I do believe that overall the story of this receiver group is how productive they will be as a whole unit or a whole position group in general. And I think it's going to come in a very unorthodox fashion. And I think it's not going to be pretty to the eye half the time, we'll call it. But overall, when you sit there and you look at the numbers and say you look at Josh Allen's passing numbers and go, holy heck, how did Josh Allen get to that number? Who was the breakout star of this? I don't know if you're necessarily going to have that singular name. Like for the years, it's been, of course, Diggs was the direct proponent of Josh Allen's success, or vice versa, right? Josh Allen was a proponent of Diggs' success. They were a 1-for-1 where you were getting, 1,200 plus yards and a multitude of touchdowns, leading the league in catches for Diggs, so on and so forth. That it was like, okay, this is a straight linear line of where the success came from. I don't believe that's going to exist with this wide receiver group. I don't think there's going to be one true standout among the rest. I think as a collective unit, you will be able to appreciate what they've been come season's end as a whole rather than individual parts.
I get that. And I think there's an argument to be made for that. To borrow a phrase from Minnesota Vikings legend and Arizona Cardinals somewhat legend, he made the comment when he was the Cardinals coach, Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were. That is what I think we'll be saying about the Bills wide receivers. I'm going to start off negative tonight. I don't think we will look back on this wide receiver group fondly. I do think Josh Allen will still get his numbers in a sense that he will throw for over 4,000 yards. But my prediction, and I know that we've kind of gone through different phases with this group. There was a point in time where collectively it seemed like Bills fans were very excited about what Curtis Samuel could bring. Luka and I have never been like overly hot on Curtis Samuel. Keep in mind, we think is a useful player. There's ways to use him that he can benefit your offense. I'm not sure he's the guy you want to funnel the majority of your targets through. He's never been that guy in his career. And I don't think really there's reason to believe he's going to be that guy. And then the draft happened, and it was Keon Coleman. And, Keon Coleman has a fun skill set. He has a go up and get it kind of ability to get the ball. But again, I think he's somebody that's going to take a while to get his feet wet in the NFL. I'm not sure he's somebody you're going to just want to hit the ground running and funnel 100 targets to. Khalil Shakir is a guy that I think, for the most part, everybody's confident in. And there's a segment of fans out there that looks at what he did after Joe Brady took over midseason, and his numbers, when you extrapolate them out, were actually better than Diggs. I'm not ready to just say that, okay, Khalil Shakir is a number one in waiting. I respect Bruce Nolan completely. I respect everything he thinks about football, and I respect his eye for the talent. He made a great comment about Khalil Shakir. However fast you think he is, he's one notch faster, something to that effect. And I get all that. And I agree with that. But I think there's a huge gap, and this is not what Bruce was saying, so this isn't an attack on him. There's a huge gap between being better than you think he is and a number one in the league. And I think at the end of the year, we will look at this Bills group, and if 100 targets go to Khalil Shakir or 100 targets go to Curtis Samuel, we'll be left thinking, that was cool. Imagine if they would have gone to someone like Jamar Chase, someone like Stephon Diggs in his prime. And there's two examples teams or people like to point to for where the Bills could get their success from. One is the Green Bay Packers. They don't really have a true number one. They've drafted a lot of mid-round picks. They have Reed, they have Wicks, they have Christian Watson. I know I'm missing somebody else, but it's like any given day, somebody can have their day. And I look at that and I think, yeah, that's a good core. That's a great argument. I don't know why I keep going to Jamar Chase. Put Jamar Chase on top of that group, and everybody eats, and that group is that much scarier. I think this idea that it's somehow easier to know where the ball's going when you have a number one, that just reminds me of like something you say when you don't have a number one. Like somehow it's easier to defend a team with a number one because you know where the ball's going. The other thing I'll say, Luka, and we're not going to spend this long on all the questions, but I do think this is like the question for the Bills. There's this idea that the Chiefs were the blueprint for getting rid of your number one and not having a great wide receiver core name value wise, and maybe even like the Bills plan to do, having the tight end be your best receiver. And I will just tell you that I would not look at the 2023 Chiefs as an offensive success story. If you want to model yourself after the 2023 Chiefs, you better bring 3 all-pros on defense like they had with L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, and Chris Jones, and the best defensive play caller, in my opinion, on their side of the ball. The other thing I will tell you is they went out this offseason after having 6 games last year where they scored less than 20 points. They went 4-4 at home, or I guess they would have had 5 home games. So 5-4 at home. They lost 4 home games. They went out this offseason and they spent free agent money on Hollywood Brown. They traded up, remember that, for a wide receiver in the draft. So they told you they weren't happy with where their receivers were. So, and this is a team that's been aggressive trying to fill the receiver position, spending a 2nd-round pick on Sky Moore, spending a 3rd-round pick in a trade on Kadarius Toney, going out and signing Juju Smith-Schuster. They've been trying to fix the situation. The defense is great. Patrick Mahomes is an all-time great. Travis Kelce is an all-time great. Andy Reid is an all-time great. Steve Spagnuolo is an all-time great. And they're able to overcome regardless, but it's not a path that you just want to assume you can follow. And that's where my issue is with the Bills right now is you have Josh Allen at his age 27 season when, unless you're one of the 11 players who stupidly voted him as overrated, have a quarterback that everybody believes is one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the entire sport, and you're shortchanging him at wide receiver this year. And to me, that's disappointing. And I do think ultimately could be the reason why the Bills don't make it to the top of the mountain this year.
Just to wrap it up too, I even said I do believe that even looking back, it's going to be, man, it would be nice having that number one. It feels like we're still going to be okay because we do have 17 and that's where I truly live. And I think it's not like it's a bunch of bums in our wide receiver room. Of course, I do think, for instance, that this receiver room has greater potential going into the season than the Chiefs one did last year for them. I will even start there, which is funny to say because one of the individuals we're going to lean on is one of the individuals was leaned on by the Chiefs. But overall, it's going to feel like the past couple of years, Josh, where I remember us talking about how if we lost Diggs and everyone else had to slide up one slot where they would be, this would have been what we had, would have been, a bottom 8 receiver room in the league. And because of Diggs, at least everyone else slid into their spot, and then when Gabe Davis made that leap up to the 2nd receiver spot, it was like Gabe Davis is okay right now. It's disappointing though, because what built the promise of Gabe Davis was what we saw when he was kind of that big slot 3rd, 4th receiver role. And he was able to explode with those opportunities. And it felt like if we had a true number two, because Diggs was the one at the time, that would slide Gabe Davis down to the more appropriate role. And that's what it feels like you have again still with this group. Not that they're not going to be productive overall, and it will be okay in my eyes, at least. It sounds like a little bit pessimism out of yours, but I'm not saying I'm optimistic over here. It's just I'm pretty neutral where I believe that because 17's throwing them the ball, it'll be okay. It's one of those things where it's okay, but imagine if you had that alpha and then from there, Khalil Shakir was just your true slot dependent. When you need him, you'll have him in those opportunity spots. Mac Hollins isn't being looked at as that big X out there when needed it for blocking situations in downfield. Keon Coleman, I'm not saying they're going to lean on him because I don't believe that will be the case. He's going to be one in the rotation kind of deal. But overall, I do think some eyes are going to be on him to maybe see some production, or at least we'll call them flashes, right? Or, maybe it's a splash game here or there. People are going to want to see that. If you still had Diggs in his prime, we'll call it, or, any other kind of true number one, I don't believe that kind of microscope would be there for a Keon Coleman. And I'm not going to say that Keon Coleman feels like the kind of guy that could be a problem for, because I don't believe that to be the case. I think he's pretty good at living in his own world, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that it would be really nice to be there because, as you also put it, and I think it's perfectly said, we are now in the prime time of Josh Allen with almost a timer that has been started. He's in his 27-year-old year. It's like he's not getting any younger, not saying that he's old already, but you don't want to feel like one of these years was wasted because you needed to reshuffle stuff and you did a little bit too extreme. And I don't think that'll feel like that at the end of the season, but you're playing with a little bit of fire on this one when it comes to this year. And I really hope that correction comes similar, like we saw with the Chiefs this past draft and this past offseason. You'll see that with the Bills then come next offseason.
And I will say this, Luka and I are fully aware of why the Bills did what they did this offseason. And I, for one, applaud them for it. I think that the writing was on the wall that it was time to stop kicking the can down the road with restructures on guys like Poyer, Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Mitch Morse. I think that group had their chance. And I think this is a take your medicine year, which is healthy. And it gives the Bills a chance to reset next year. I absolutely would choose that path over bringing everybody back, running it back, and then having to do your take your medicine year next year. So from that standpoint, I totally get it. I just, I can understand that while also I'm not going to pretend like it's better than what it is. All right, Luka, we're going to now transition into picking games, and we are going to, while we do this, there will be certain times where I pause the show and say, let's talk about this. It won't take 15 minutes like the wide receiver conversation. To me, that's just the elephant in the room right now with the Bills. And I think I get where Brandon Beane's coming from. Like, hey, I have Josh Allen. Let's see what he can do with this group. All right. Week 1, the Bills, last time I checked, were 5.5 to 6-point favorites over the Arizona Cardinals, who are here for a 1 p.m. kickoff in Buffalo, which if you like 1 p.m. kickoffs in Buffalo, enjoy this one, folks, because we have to wait until week 7 to have that happen again when the Tennessee Titans come to town. It is Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night, and then away, and then Monday night. I know it's hard life being a spotlight team. Imagine the drought Bills having to deal with this. We got all the 1:00 games we wanted. A team you are very familiar with, Luka, comes to town. They had a down year last year. Were the worst team in the NFC West. They drafted high enough to get Marvin Harrison Jr. They played a lot of the season without Kyler Murray, which is a big reason why their record was as poor as it was. Along the way, they found a star tight end in Trey McBride. They found a useful wide receiver in Michael Wilson. And, they found some issues on defense that I don't know how much better they've gotten this offseason. What's going to happen week 1 when the Cardinals come to town?
The Cardinals are not world beaters on defense, but I will say I do think they get overlooked a little bit more than they deserve. All respect to a guy like, for instance, Zaven Collins. He was drafted as what should have been kind of your Mike or even Will linebacker and be able to move laterally while standing up and kind of operate from that. He's transitioning into a pass rusher, something that he did in kind of as a hybrid role in college. And now, because the Cardinals have this real need, I mean, their only pass rusher other than him now was Dennis Gardeck. And if you know anything about Dennis Gardeck, he's a dog, for one, but two, he's not exactly what we would call a premier edge rusher. So from there, the Cardinals are a little bit, iffy on that sense, but I do believe they have one of the more underrated safety tandems in Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson. I think if you really watch football and you understand it, I think those are two individuals where you just always, I think you forget about them until you turn on a Cardinals game, and it's because Cardinals aren't exactly on the national television scene regularly, and that is mostly to do with the past couple seasons because of Kyler's injury that led to a bad year, and then last season where he was out for a significant amount of the time to rehab his ACL. But with that said, because of that ACL and what we saw when Kyler came back, I will say this. As an individual who grew to absolutely hate Kyler Murray from all the contract situation that came out, when he came back on the field, what impressed me the most was the amount of pop that you saw out of him, even coming back from an ACL thing, wearing a brace. He could still move around just as if it was pre-ACL injury. And I think individuals are maybe, I don't think people are sleeping on them. I've heard enough about the Cardinals in the national media where it makes a lot of sense. It's Maserati Marv, Kyler Murray, all this stuff. And it's like, there is a path to success for this team, and it's going to be putting up some points, but they're going to do it not necessarily through the air. Where it really comes down to is I do think they have a really nice backfield with James Conner, who somehow is still very productive at this point in his career. And I'm saying that like he's ancient, but it's not like he pops off the screen. He just is so productive out of the backfield. And then they drafted Trey Benson, who I believe to be the best running back in this past year's draft, to kind of be that 1-2 punch. And they love to run the ball. That's how they won games like against the Cowboys with, Josh Dobbs at quarterback last season early on and so on and so forth. They are actually very good at running the ball, something that the Bills have shown that they can struggle with at times, depending on the circumstance. And when you are all eyes on Kyler, when you're all eyes on Marv, it could be easy to forget about James Conner and Trey Benson in the backfield, which is why I think this will be a little bit of a tricky matchup overall. But to put a pretty bow on it, I've been flipping back and forth. I really do think this is closer to a coin flip game than a lot of people want to believe it to be. And it's going to be the ugliest shootout it could possibly be, Josh. I just do believe because of that other Josh that wears 17, the Bills will pull this out. I'm not giving a score prediction. I will not be doing that this year. But overall, I do believe the Bills will win this one and start 1-0 because they do have Josh Allen. They do have experience with McDermott at coach. And I don't think the defense is going to be pretty for the Bills overall. I think there's a lot of question marks that we all understand are there. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of success on the Bills sideline, and the Cardinals are kind of new to this. And it's just going to pull out that win for the Bills.
This is a fascinating matchup. We say all the time, Luka, week 1 is a liar. And you hate to see what I think most people would think as one of the easier games on the Bills schedule, week 1, because there's so much randomness. Now, just using your NFL, I follow the sport hat, there's a lot you like about for the Bills in this matchup. West Coast team going east. It's a 1:00 start. It's a Bills team that is coming off a very disappointing end of their season against a Cardinals team that's, in flux. Like, you can make the argument that their second best player is a rookie. That's how much I think of the rookie, but you can make that argument. In Marvin Harrison, obviously. I'm not like going to their 4th round or whatever. I will say this. The key word you said is shootout. I think there is a world where the Bills could lose this game. It would be tough. You better win on Thursday if you lose this game. Where the Bills could lose this game, and I could at least be like not on pessimism level 10. If they lose the shootout you describe, if they lose a game to the Cardinals 38-34, and it's just Kyler Murray does what we've seen Kyler Murray do before. Dorian Williams looks like a fish out of water with one of the most athletic quarterbacks. Marvin Harrison Jr. is getting deep on our safeties right now, who we know it's going to be Taylor Rapp, which is, and maybe Cam Lewis, or is it Edwards? Is it going to be DeMar Hamlin? There's a world where, I think they're going to stress the Bills defense. I really do. And I could just see a world where it's one of those days where whoever has the ball last, fine. I can live with that. I want the Bills to win, obviously. I can live with that. If the Bills struggle to score points in this game, look out. Look out. Brandon Thorne who works for Establish the Run, I'm a huge fan of their content, has the Cardinals rated 32nd in the league in pass rush, and that is before they lost their first round pick. The kid out of Missouri, his name escaped me. Washington? That's not
Yeah.
his name. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Washington.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So Luka mentioned the names. And then when you look at their cornerbacks, I like Sean Murphy Bunting, but that's not Sauce Gardner over there. Okay. And then you have Thomas, you have Williams, not exactly the Jets. So you have a pass rush that can't get to the quarterback, and you don't necessarily have sticky coverage. They have athletic linebackers. If the Bills are struggling to put up points on this defense, it's going to be time to wonder right now. It's week one. Weird things happen. But I'm telling you, after an offseason of do they have enough weapons? If their weapons can't get open on this defense with what I project their pass rush to be against a defensive play caller and Jonathan Gannon that I'm not a big fan of, I think he kind of rode the coattails of a lot of talent in Philadelphia and didn't necessarily counterpunch whenever things were thrown at him. Holy cow. Not ideal. So I expect the Bills to get their points in this game. I'm certainly not predicting catastrophe. I do think that the Bills will get their stops in this game. I give McDermott a lot of credit. I'm not just going to assume that Kyler Murray is going to go out there and run all over them. I think it'll be a competitive game. I think it'll be scary, longer than many of us are comfortable with. I think the Bills pull away late and probably win this game by about 10 points. Give me a Bills win. On to week 2, which is very quickly 4 days later, Luka. The Bills are in Miami. That's not nothing to me because I think guys who are on the fence of playing week 1, Curtis Samuel, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, could very much be held out for that game to make sure they're right for Miami. The benefit is if you play week 1, you only have 3 days until the next game. If you play week 2, you play and then you have 11 days. Huge difference. Plus, week 2, way more important. We know Miami's out for blood. The Bills essentially ended their season last year in Miami. We know that they went on to play another week, but come on, they were already dead at that point in time when they went to Kansas City. Miami is not without their problems, though. They are going to start the season without Bradley Chubb and without Odell Beckham Jr. Their offensive line is getting a lot of criticism down there. There are people down there that are wondering if that's going to sink their battleship before the season even starts. Tua got his extension. Mike McDaniel got an extension this offseason. I'll go ahead and start with my prediction, Luka. I think the Bills are going to lose this game. And there's a lot of reasons that I just don't like this spot for the Bills. One, Thursday Night Football is traditionally a tough spot for road teams. You have the added element of travel. And the other thing I will say, I trust Sean McDermott's ability to coach up a defense to stop the Dolphins. What makes it tricky is a short week. And they can't just bypass the Cardinals. Now, look, if the Bills go out there and they're like, oh, we can beat the Cardinals no matter what we do, so let's just go ahead and start game planning for the Dolphins. That's a risk. I worry then about the Dorian Williams factor. I worry then about Taylor Rapp and whoever's starting next to him, because you want to talk about pre-snap eye candy and what can throw you off. And if you give this Dolphins team an inch, they can take a mile with the explosive athletes they have on their side, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and A-Chain. And I do think there's an element of this is going to be kind of like the Dolphins Super Bowl. Not really. That's disrespectful. But this is a team that ended their season officially 2 years ago in the Skylar Thompson game. And then last year went down there when Tua was playing and won the AFC East Championship on their field. They're tired of the Bills. And this is a spot that they should win. And I think they're going to win. And I will be elated to be wrong, but there's just a lot about this matchup I don't like. I don't like where it's on the schedule. I don't like that it's Thursday Night Football. I don't like that it's week 2. I don't like that it's in Miami. There's just a lot about this that I don't like, and I think that we're going to not like the result.
It's fair because I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag on this one. We share a brain. I believe overall, and I'm just going to go ahead and even share the graphic here. I believe the Bills end up losing this one. And I'll kind of go into it fairly simple on why I believe this, because I think there's actually a lot going for the Bills in this case, where it's an early season game in Miami where they've lucked out and it's a nighttime game. And that, of course, as we all are very well aware of, is a lot better than a 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday early in the season in Miami. That's where they were able to put up 70 against Denver. That's where we fell short because everyone was dying of dehydration a few years ago. And it's not a fun time to play Miami 1 o'clock in the afternoon in this situation. Where I think it kind of starts going off the rails a little bit is the Bills are still kind of workshopping through some things offensively, where when you're playing against one of the worst defenses in the league in Arizona, that might not show as much. But I'm not saying the Dolphins have world beaters on defense. They have players, they have guys. They're not the best, but they're good enough to get by. It's amazing that Jalen Phillips is going to be active, let alone playing. That's something in its own right. And you have Chop Robinson as the other edge. I think he's going to be okay for a team and defense such as their own. And then the problem with the Dolphins is when you play them early in the season, they are fully rested. They are ready. And when you need to run a track meet, you need to be rested and ready. And the Dolphins are the best team in the league, as anyone is aware of, to run a track meet. And I just don't think the Bills have an answer for that, let alone on a full week of rest, than on a short week going into their house where they don't need to travel at all, because even the previous week, I believe it is home to the Jaguars. So they don't have any travel going into this. They're going to be rested and ready to go. And yes, it's nighttime, but overall, the motivation from the last time that this matchup happened and losing essentially a playoff game where I love Chris Brockman on Rich Eisen show saying that Tua is the first quarterback of all time to lose 2 playoff games in a single season, because that's exactly what he did last year.
Facts.
But effectively, you're looking at this game. They have had it circled as soon as the schedule release came out. They know what's at stake at this. Luckily for the Bills, it is only a week 2 game. And I forecast myself on our post-game show, Josh, talking exactly that, where it's like, hey, it's just week 2. It's okay. The panic level is not at 10 here. We're at a 4 or a 5. You know, it's middle of the road, because there's still a lot of ball left. A lot of things can happen. The NFL doesn't get won or lost in week 2. It gets won in February. So let's pump the brakes a little bit. But unfortunately for Bills and Bills fans, I do think this one just sets up for defeat for the Bills overall. And it's going to be a tough pill to swallow as we go into that football Sunday.
Week 1, referendum on the receiver group. Week 2, I think a little bit of a referendum on the defensive line. And I will say, Tua gets the ball out quick. So I think there's a world where the D-line could play well and it wouldn't matter. And I will say also, we don't have to be right about this. And if the Bills win this game, there's going to be a huge feeling in South Florida of, if not now, then. I have a question I want to ask you about the Dolphins here coming up soon, but I'm going to wait till after another AFC East game comes up on the schedule here in a couple of weeks. Let's move on to week 3. The Bills, coming off of a loss in both of our opinions on Thursday Night Football, have a long time to wait. They wait all the way till Monday Night Football of the following week, which is a nice little rest advantage to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I will say took advantage, no harm by them. They just played the game in front of them, of the Bills having a very unfortunate jet lag disadvantage last year, where the NFL decided to experiment with allowing one team to be out there a week early and the other team not. And it showed. Boy, did it show. And then the Bills lost Milano. They lost Daquan Jones. The Bills fans lost their hearts. It was just like, holy cow, this game is the worst. And now on the Josh Allen resume, there are 2 really disappointing losses to the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's the, is that Josh Allen or is that Josh Allen game in Jacksonville, the 9-6 game or whatever it was. And then the London game. I think, Luka, that the Bills are going to come out and swinging. They're going to have a bad taste in their mouth from the week 2 loss to the Miami Dolphins. The Jaguars have spent the most money of any team this offseason, but it was all on guys already on their roster. It was on Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen. I like the roster. I respect the roster. What I don't see on this roster is one thing I like significantly better about the Jaguars than the Bills. I like Travis Etienne. He would be the best running back on the Bills, but he's not Saquon Barkley in his prime. Give me Josh Allen over Trevor Lawrence all day long. We know what Gabe Davis is. And I like Brian Thomas Jr. I think he was a very fun prospect. I don't know in week 3 of his rookie year if he's ready to take over a game. Christian Kirk is a very fine player. And I think Evan Ingram sometimes is a statistical product of receivers being hurt and then funneling targets to him. On the defensive side of the ball, they have some nice players. The Bills have some nice players. They have one guy who's a star, not a superstar, the other Josh Allen. And outside of that, I think the Bills match up pretty well with this team. I would expect Trevor Lawrence to make 1 or 2 boneheaded plays in this game and the Bills to find a way to win on Monday Night Football and improve to 2-1.
This matchup is interesting to me in the sense of it is hard to look past what happened last year. I will say when I was thinking this over and I was kind of really going through this schedule, it was hard to look past how the Bills were incapable of finding a way to win when they last faced this team. And it's something where I feel like when you look at the Bills over the past few seasons now, a lot of times they have been able to find that gear, find that ability to win. And going into that game last year, might I remind everyone, that was the hottest. I mean, the Bills were probably the hottest team in the NFL at that time. They were coming off 3 straight weeks where they were world beaters. They were absolutely dominating teams like the Dolphins, like the Commies, like the Raiders at that point. And I mean, 2 of those 3 aren't good teams, but you dominated a division rival in the Dolphins 48-24. I want to say they
A
doubled them
week
up.
after they scored 70.
Yeah, a week after they put up 70 and Achan kind of introduced himself to the league.
Yeah.
You have this situation where the Bills just they had some injuries, of course, and things like that, but they had chances and had the way to find a way to win, and yet all said and done, they just couldn't get it done. Where I don't think the error is coming here, though, is that long time off of a loss, which is going to be, in my eyes, with a team like this, with Josh Allen, with the rest involved, is an easy way to make sure a singular focus is there, on top of understanding this is a team that the Bills let off the hook last time. Because I do think overall, maybe they didn't have their best game on the day, but I do believe, of course, that the Bills were a better team than the Jags even last season when they lost to that team. So I think a lot of things are going their way. On top of it all, the nice cherry on top, Josh, is I will be there. So they're going to win that game. And yeah, I think this is that nice bounce back we will have from the unfortunate Thursday night loss in Miami. And it'll kind of reset everything where we're like, look, it's hard to win a game in Miami with a short week when they're fully rested. But we showed on Monday night against a Jags team that I think people still do like. We are the better team, and we don't have to worry about Josh Allen versus Josh Allen anymore, because it's not Josh Allen on the other side. It's Josh Hines Allen, and no more confusion will be had there, and no more vendetta will be seen by either side. And I think they will be able to get through. And maybe that's the thing to get off of Josh Allen, this quarterback's back, and to get over the hump.
2 things. I wonder if he did that for marketing purposes, because there have been times in the past I've wanted to figure out something about him, whether it was for show prep or just look up something for him. If you Google Josh Allen Jaguars, the first 10 searches that come up are our Josh Allen like highlights against the Jaguars. It's it's like a mega superstar quarterback. He just didn't have a chance. So I wonder that. 2, I got to call you out a little bit. You say, I'll be there. Don't worry about it. The last time you were at a Monday night game, Luka,
Yeah, that's true.
Broncos.
Yeah, not a good time.
So, hey, it is what it is. All right. So we have the Bills 2-1. And then, man, it's a tough stretch coming up against some very important AFC opponents, starting with the Baltimore Ravens, who had the best record in the AFC last year, lost the AFC title game to the Chiefs. This is a team, they lost some guys this offseason. I don't know how consequential it is. Patrick Queen was not an impactful player for them, despite being a high pick. Another LSU guy, Odell Beckham, I don't think he was that important for them. I think it really does come down to how healthy is Mark Andrews. And again, the running backs, Dobbins and Gus Edwards, you combine them together at their best. Are they still as good as Derrick Henry? I don't think so. I think that I understand they lost some depth on their O-line. And, they lost Bowser, who I don't think is, it's not nothing, but I think some of the losses the Ravens have taken have been a little bit overblown. I think this team's going to be just fine. Luka, I've predicted the last 2 games first, so I'm going to let you go first. The Bills, this is a beauty. Sunday Night Football. All I will say is, please let's get the black Ravens jerseys and the white Bills jerseys under the lights in that stadium. Like, the world needs it. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. What do you see happening in this game?
So, one, yes, I feel like the last couple times we've had this matchup, Josh, we've been asking for that. And please give us the all blacks versus the all whites. It's a uniform dream matchup. With the Ravens, I think the thing that you highlighted there is there's some individuals. I don't think this is universal at all. There's some thought out there where changes have occurred. It's going to be a different Ravens team now. And all in all, we're not entirely sure what to expect. Lamar's coming off of his second MVP. Say what you want about it. It is, it's not like he was not deserving of it. I don't believe, at least myself personally, he still had an outstanding year of his own. I will say for betting purposes, I do wish Josh Allen won it, only because in the sense of, I think Josh Allen also deserved it. It also comes into, I did also bet Myles Garrett and Christian McCaffrey. So some of those bigger parlays would have hit and I would be a much happier individual. To get off my own self-individual drives, Lamar has been great. And I think Lamar shines best earlier in the season, of course, because the Ravens, even in the Roman years, have always introduced some new things to kind of the mix of what they have. And then the defense does the same. And I don't think they're entirely someone that you can use previous year tape to understand what they're going to do. So you need them to give you current tape in order to better understand them. That said, the Bills have gotten the best of them early in the season previously. I think that the true X factor in this, though, Josh, is Derrick Henry is something that this Ravens team has never had with Lamar Jackson. And I think there is still a little bit in his tank. And if there was a time not to be playing the Ravens with Derrick Henry, it's early on in the season. And when he is still at least at full health, similar like I talked about with the Dolphins, where they're rested and healthy, this is not the time to be playing the Ravens right now. And I think it was just an unlucky draw when it comes to where the Bills have them on the schedule. So with that in mind, it's not a short week. Yes, it's Monday to Sunday night, but I don't consider that short week. It's a pretty conventional schedule nowadays. And Sunday night, all eyes on you. I think you get the best of each side respectively. And Derrick Henry is an X factor in my eyes, where it's not again where I think the Bills are an awful run defense, but when you add in Lamar / Derrick Henry, that's a really hard thing for any team to defend, let alone an average, we'll call it, to above average run defense, where we do have question marks at safety too at the next level. So I actually have the Ravens winning this one in week 4 and dropping the Bills to 2-2.
I think this will probably be the first time that we really question the receiver group. I give a lot of respect to guys like Trenton Simpson, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton. I think this is a Ravens group that can take away Dalton Kincaid without having to dedicate like additional resources to it. And the team speed they have on defense and the way they're coached up, I think they'll have the ability to limit the Josh Allen runs. I also think some of the dudes they have up front on defense, whether it's Michael Pierce, I love Justin Matabuke. He love pronouncing his name. He's a stud. I think it's going to be tough for the Bills to run on this team. I really do. So I think this will be the first example of receivers we need you to win. And if they can get it done, the Bills will have a chance to win this game. I don't expect the Bills to get blown out in this game. I think these are two fairly even teams. I give the Ravens the edge. One, they're at home. Two, the Bills are coming off of a short week, having Monday Night Football. And I don't like this matchup early in the season for a Bills team that's still going to be figuring things out. I don't want to call this one a blowout, but I think it'll be one of those games that's not quite as close as we would like it to be. Like you lose on a Justin Tucker walk-off field goal, you live with it. I think it'll be one of those games where it's like maybe the Bills score late and to put it back to one possession, but it never really felt like it was a game after about the first quarter. And that's kind of just how I'm feeling about this one. Luka, this is an interesting stretch here because I think prior to the Ravens game, we will be talking about the fact that, okay, the Bills are 2-1 in our predictions, but they have 3 big time road games coming up. And I think we're going to have one of those conversations of, would you sign for 2-1? Like sign in blood for that. Would you just take one win? Because honestly, it's just the 3 losses in a row that could really sink you. And that's what's going to bring us to this mega matchup week 5 that we've all been looking forward to since the time he was traded away. Stephon Diggs and the Houston Texans with their young superstar quarterback, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Joe Mixon, assuming health is still there for all these players come week number 5. Welcome in Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills and the new look Buffalo Bills on offense. 2-part question for you, Luka. 1, will there be a pregame handshake between Josh Allen and Stefan Diggs. And when I say handshake, I don't mean like when they were teammates and they did all the little, like, like an embrace, like a hug and like CBS camera catches it and look, they're catching up, or is it going to be they're going to keep their distance like Shaq and Kobe used to do? Or two, and two, who wins?
One, yes. I
I agree.
believe that a lot of it's weird that I live in this headspace where I don't believe that these two are as buddy buddy as like we saw early on with them on the cover of Sports Illustrated for kids, and they were besties and things like that. But I also don't believe there's really that great of animosity between them. I don't think it's as toxic as a relationship as others want to believe it to be. I think they are, one, they're both professionals at this point in their careers. And two, I do think that there's a mutual appreciation for what each other did for their respective careers. And that's something where they hold themselves and their careers in such high regard that if you respect what another person did to propel yourself at where you are, you have to almost appreciate them for that, just naturally. So overall, yes. To answer the first question, yes. Secondly, it's an interesting game from a Texans perspective. And I wanted it. This is kind of how I looked at it, because I do think this is another one of those coin flip games, or at least close to a coin flip game in my eyes. And when you look at the Texans, they open up against the Colts, at the Colts. Then they play the Bears. They're at the Vikings. They host the Jaguars going into this game. At any point, they only have one primetime game, being the Bears one, which will be on Sunday night at home. And I think that'll be their first showcase game. It's Roma Dunze. Geez. Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze versus CJ Stroud. Whereas, of course, everyone's hoping that Caleb Williams replicates the historic numbers that CJ Stroud put up. And this is where I think that week 2 game, you'll see CJ Stroud essentially little boying Caleb Williams and being like, hey, I was special. This is why, and introducing Caleb to the NFL. That said, this is the first real test for the Texans. This is realistically, I think divisional games are divisional games, of course, so I'm not disrespecting the Colts and Jags respectively, but this is the first real test for the Texans. It's not a nationally televised game. It's a 1:00 game. It's going to be just lost in the shuffle, although I don't think lost in the shuffle is an appropriate term. But it's a big game for the Texans. And I think this is where I talked about earlier, where experience and been there, done it, and finding a way to win will come through for the Bills. And I think this is the first time this season that the Texans, with CJ Stroud and everything going on, will kind of learn where they are in the AFC hierarchy. And this is not going to come easy for them. Yes, the Bills have a lot of question marks, but once you get to weeks 5 through 6, 7, 8, and so on and so forth, you would like to expect a great team and a great organization with good coaching to start to shine and come through. Where you mentioned, you start to question mark receivers and such, but maybe this is where they start to buy in. I don't see where the Texans have an answer to a Dalton Kincaid, to be quite honest. I think you have a rookie free safety in Kalen Bullock. They have Jimmy Ward out there as their strong safe right now. I'm not saying Jimmy Ward's bad, because I think he's fine, but I think there's also a reason that he's no longer a Niner, and now he's with his buddy out there in Houston to play with them. They have their edges in Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, but they don't have interior home records, which is where I think you can really get the Bills and disrupt Josh Allen, of course. They don't really have any X factors at linebacker, all due respect to Aziz Al-Shaair. But it's one of those things. Then, too, on top of it, the cherry on top to me entirely is I don't believe Stefan Diggs will be as impactful as it feels like he should be on paper for this Texans team. And there's a real question in my eyes where he feels like the third best receiver there if Tank Dell's at full health and ready to go again. And then Joe Mixon isn't some magical answer in the backfield for them compared to where Devin Singletary had them last season. So all respect to CJ Stroud. I think he's a phenomenal quarterback. He's in that elite category. He's not top 3 though. And realistically, I think this is where Josh Allen shines, lets them know I'm still the big dog here, and effectively will get the Bills the win in Houston in a big week 5 game for the Bills.
I don't know how much I want to say this, but I'm going to say it. What am I going to hide from? I don't believe in the Texans. I just don't. And this is such a tough thing to say because I love the quarterback. You can go back and watch our draft show. Luka and I and Stokes were losing our minds when he wasn't the first overall pick. It was very frustrating. And, no disrespect to Bryce Young, but holy cow. Um, and I love the coach. I love what D'Amico Ryans is building. It's always cool for me to see a player that I followed from the time he was drafted to the time he retired become a coach and do well. That's cool for me. I get the same feelings watching John Lynch basically as a GM in San Francisco. But I said the same thing about the Jaguars last year, coming into that year, saying if you look under the hood, there's some reasons to question it. And the Texans had a lot of the same path as the Jaguars. They made it to the second round of the playoffs. That's impressive. They had a rookie quarterback who won Offensive Rookie of the Year in a year where a receiver came out and had the best rookie year we've seen by a receiver. That's how good CJ Stroud was. You look under the hood. They won a division with a Colts team that lost their starting quarterback, a Jaguars team that lost their starting quarterback, and a Titans team that benched their starting quarterback. It came down to week 18 when a Colts running back dropped a pass that hit him in the hands. Okay. They won a playoff game, albeit we all agree it was an upgrade, against a Browns team that was playing a quarterback off the couch. In their regular season, okay, and we don't have to dissect this too much, but they have a game where they barely beat the Cardinals at home, and it was Kyler Murray, one of his first couple games back.
Yep.
They lose at home to the Jaguars by 3. They lose. They get blown out by the Jets, who were starting Zach Wilson. I'm not saying like lose to the Jets like the Bills did, 30-6. They're losing big time to the Titans at home and Will Levis, and then end up capitalizing on mistakes and coming back and winning in overtime. They barely beat the Broncos. I know, ha ha ha, we lost to the Broncos. I get it. But you start looking down. They got blown out by those same Browns at home. And you just kind of go up and down the list. They barely beat the Saints. They lost to the Panthers. They lost to the Falcons and Desmond Ridder. I don't know. I don't know that it was a cool story. I'm not ready to put them in the upper echelon. I think we saw what happened when they hit the upper echelon when they played Baltimore. Baltimore and the Bills went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs and lost. Tip your cap. The Chiefs are the Chiefs of the class of the league. The Bills and Baltimore went toe-to-toe with them. The Texans looked like they didn't belong on the same field as Baltimore. And to Luka's point, I think this is going to be kind of a measuring stick game. The other thing I will say, and Luka and I talked about this a little bit off the air, and I do believe this a little bit, a lot. They didn't need Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon. They had a good thing going. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, great coach. I think as much sizzle as those guys bring right now, I don't know how much steak comes with that sizzle. Joe Mixon is, in my opinion, past his prime. We talked to some folks that are really close to the Bengals, and Joe Mixon has not been their favorite player for like 3 years. I think he's been in a good situation, high volume guy, but not necessarily a great player. We know firsthand that Stephon Diggs was not the 2020 Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is also a very strong personality. I don't know that that's a net positive. It's good players, but I also worry about in this specific spot, Luka, this specific spot, Stephon Diggs going against the team that, for lack of a better term, ignored his presence on the roster the second half of the season. In what's going to be talked about all week on all the national shows was it Josh Allen? Was it Diggs? Was it Josh Allen? Was it Diggs? He is not going to be okay with getting 2 catches, even if it's a win. I could be wrong. I would be stunned. I would imagine the Texans are going to go into that game plan trying to force feed Diggs. I think that's a disaster. I think it has this disaster written all over it. I think a lot of the reasons we talked about, the Bills probably coming off of a loss. I think the Bills are the more buttoned up team. I think the Bills win this game.
Yeah. I was holding off until the very end to see if you were going to do a bait and switch on that one. But as soon as you used the term disaster, Josh, and we can move on. But that was when I was confident to put up the graphic that I proactively put. And I was like, all right, he's win. Just to reiterate to individuals, because now that we're 5 weeks into this and Josh and I have the exact same, I keep pointing over here, have the same records. We did not discuss any of this. We like doing this stuff off the hip without telling the other individual. So I do find it funny. We're around each other too much, Josh, because I think we're sharing too much of a brain on this. And your last point there is so spot on. The outline thing to me is, if they try to force feed Diggs in this. If you in any world think McDermott won't be prepared for something of such, and Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas, hopefully they're healthy and everything, and they're not ready for it, and so on. Like, if the Texans were smart, they'd almost use Diggs this week as a complete decoy and sell Diggs why that's the thing they need to do, because that's a better avenue to success for them this particular week.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. But again, Luka, for those that don't know, I'm supposed to give my scores early so Luka can adjust the graphic because he has no idea, and I totally waited to the end there. So that's on me. Week number 6. So we both have the Bills at 3-2, and we both have them coming off of a win in Houston. The Bills go to New Jersey to take on the Jets in what will be going down as the Lewis Cine game, since the Bills stole Lewis Cine from the Jets. I'll go first on this one, Luka. I have the Bills losing this game. I'll get it out of the way right off the bat for you. This is a Jets team that has played the Bills very well the last couple of years without anything at quarterback, anything. And I think it's very easy to look at the Jets and think, well, Rodgers is, 2 years from playing and he wasn't even that great in Green Bay. And I do think it's important to remember, like, okay, he doesn't need to be MVP Rodgers from 2021. He needs to be better than Zach Wilson. Can we get there? Because I'm pretty sure he's going to get there. And if he can get there, then he has a chance to at least win one game from the Bills, because Zach Wilson's done it the last 2 years. The Bills gave them a lot of help, but that's because that defense is excellent. They're not fooled by the things the Bills do. They have a good idea of what to do against the Bills. I always hesitate to assume defenses will stay great year to year, but when the players that were great are still there, and there's no reason to think they've aged out, Reed and Gardner are excellent. I like Johnson a lot, their defensive end, going into his 3rd year. Mosley's a good player. He's always given the Bills fits. And, all due respect to Ed Oliver, I'll still take Quinnen Williams 10 times out of 10 over him. I think this is a Jets team that just matches up well with the Bills. I would not expect at this point Hassan Reddick to be there. It doesn't sound like that's going to happen anytime soon, but the team speed on defense, the familiarity with the Bills, this to me feels kind of like the week 2 Miami game, kind of a statement game for the Jets. Like, okay, Rodgers, we've waited 2 years for you now. This is the hill you have to get over. If you can't beat this team at home, but Zach Wilson can, then we're questioning everything. And boy, wouldn't that be delightful. But no, I think the Jets have enough on this day to get it done. And the Jets beat the Bills, and the Bills fall to 3-3.
We are too alike right now, Josh. And I don't like it. I don't like it. So where does this go wrong? Because I think your starting point was exactly where my head's at. All the talk I feel like you see against people who want to figure out a reason why the Jets won't be successful this year is around, well, Rodgers can't be his MVP self. He can't be his elite self and stuff. And I do subscribe to that, both with Rodgers and Kirk Cousins for that matter. I just find it really hard to believe that quarterbacks who have been successful but are older in age have these major Achilles injuries and come back and they're going to be even 95% of themselves. I think you will be lesser than that, but in the Jets case, you definitely don't need 95% Rodgers. Imagine a 75% Rodgers from a couple of years ago on that Jets team at the time and going throughout this. If Rodgers doesn't blow his Achilles in that Monday night game, who knows what happens ultimately, but I believe the Jets would have been a playoff team probably last year. So if Rodgers, yes, coming off an Achilles injury, is back this year, why should I feel any different because he'll be 10 to 15% lesser of himself? It feels like that could have happened from natural age progression as well. Rodgers is going to be motivated to prove a point. And if there's one thing that Rodgers is really good at doing is making sure he feels like he's the smartest person in the room and he's proving everyone wrong. And he does not need any more motivation than that to provide himself a little bit of extra effort in doing what he's doing. And I think that is going to be a problem for not just the Bills, but everyone in the league overall. And yeah, this Monday night game feels like this is one I think Rodgers has circled. This is one that I think Bob Saleh has circled. And this is one that the Jets have circled because overall, they want redemption for what, even though they won the game last year in the opener, it still feels like they need to get redemption from it. And they want that statement win against a Bills team. And let's not forget, the Bills do not have success, of course, against the Jets, especially in New York of late, even when it's Zach Wilson at quarterback. So yeah, I just, it's hard for me to really see the outcome of this game as anything other than a loss. I think it's going to be very competitive. Division games. Look, if you can get the Bills plus 4.5 or whatever it is, take it, because I don't think it's anything more than a field goal difference regardless. But yeah, I think this will be a tough loss for the Bills, and the roller coaster of a season continues as they find themselves at 3-3.
Is it weird that I forgot it was a Monday night game? And I mean, it's on the graphic, so me forgetting it is embarrassing. And I kind of like that better for the Bills. Like, this feels like the point of the
No.
season where, like, under the lights, the Jets could jet.
No. I think the difference is it's not a Jets quarterback.
Yeah.
It's Aaron Rodgers.
So I want to ask you a question. We're going to take a timeout here in a second to ask a question about the Jets and the Dolphins. But there's been a theory that I've heard from a lot of folks that have either covered the Packers or have been around teams that play the Packers a lot. Rodgers looks significantly smaller. Have you noticed that? Like, yeah, I mean, he's never been a big guy, but the muscle definition, he just looks like a normal guy right now. And, I think people in Jets camp would be making a bigger deal of it if it was a huge deal. But there's a tiny part of me that wonders, like, man, are we getting ready to see like 195-pound Aaron Rodgers out there throwing the ball around? Because that's not good.
I don't know how much that matters with Rodgers. Rodgers is one of those guys where he's just naturally gifted to throw. And
Mhm.
you don't watch Rodgers and think it's not Josh Allen where you're like, of course he has this arm strength because look at him. It's like, no, you watch Rodgers flip a ball 60 yards down the field and it's with a wrist movement. The spiral is so tight and pretty. Like, as a Rodgers stan, I will hold my hands up and say it. I love Rodgers. When I went to Packers Bills a few seasons ago on Sunday night, I was hyped because it was finally my opportunity to see Rodgers in person. That was how I felt about that game. And it's never been something where I look at him physically and I understand why he is what he is when it comes to a passer and just how he operates as a quarterback. I think maybe he was bigger before, and maybe that has him, those 60-yard balls, Josh, he's just got to put a little bit more air under it. Like, I don't know how much that ultimately matters. And maybe, and just maybe in this world, he has to have a little bit less weight on himself because of that Achilles and whatnot to help with it and be able to still kind of have some sort of limited mobility to make it work. So I think Rodgers is an extremely calculated person. I think he is a very smart person. And if Rodgers has gotten smaller, there's absolutely a reason for it. And I think it's a calculated thing overall that I would trust a future Hall of Famer, a multi MVP individual such as Rodgers to know what he's doing to be at that size if it were to be a thing, Josh. That's how I'll answer that.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Luka, let's take a quick timeout and let's talk about our two AFC East rivals.
Ooh.
Which team has more pressure to win this year, the Jets or the Dolphins? And if this perceived Bills slide that I think even the most negative Bills person thinks is going to last 1 year while they get out of this cap jail, and the Bills will be right back in the mix of things next year. So it really is like that advantage, maybe somewhat similar to the year that the Brady got hurt and Castle came in and all the AFC East teams felt like, holy cow, it's our time to actually win something. Which team has more pressure, the Jets or the Dolphins?
Dolphins. It's 1,000% the Dolphins to me. And so this is probably going to be an interesting conversation. This is how I look at it. And I think you even answered the question a little bit without even realizing it. Are the Jets going to Jets? And I think there's this like, look at Rich Eisen, a very well documented Jets fan. There's still this doubt in him on what's going to happen. And I think if you talk to Jets fans anywhere, there's always this pessimism. Even if they're trying to talk optimistically about anything, there's a pessimism to it in the tone and the thought. Something will eventually happen that it won't work out the way they expect it to. And it's always been that way, right? And I think something about that, Josh, almost tempers expectations, because I think if I were, thank God I'm not, but if I were a Jets fan, I would look at this season like, just get to the playoffs. That's really what give me something that makes me enjoy being a fan of the Jets. That's how I look at it. As a Dolphins fan, or as anyone that looks at the Dolphins, it's not about just making the playoffs. They just did that, one, and then got absolutely embarrassed because it was too cold. So now, guess what? The only resolution to making sure you don't run into that same situation: win the division, something they haven't done for a very long time. On top of it, you just locked up your franchise quarterback in Tua for an extended period of time where realistically, it's going to go downhill in what weapons you have around him to facilitate and such, because you just eventually the bankroll is going to end up dry. You're not going to be able to pay people as much as you have been these past couple of years. It's why they've been pushing that down the road a little bit here. And I just think that if the Dolphins go through this year and they're unable to win the division at this point in time, the psychological defeat they will feel if the Bills, even if the Jets win the division, I think this still applies. If the Dolphins are unable to win the division, which I will say, Dolphins are right now third in betting to win the AFC East. I would say if you're a person that bets based on, just good odds, it's a great odd. I think those three are all kind of, it should be minus 110 each kind of deal. Like I believe Bills maybe edge out a little bit because of experience, but overall, I think Bills, Jets, Dolphins, if you were to ask me what I would set the lines at, it'd be like Bills minus 120, Jets plus 110, Dolphins minus 105. Like I would think the Jets are third in my eyes because there's more unknown and Rodgers is older. But the Dolphins, last I checked, were like, I want to say like plus 280, then might be plus 300 to win the AFC East. I think all eyes are on them trying to win the East, host a playoff game, and realistically, they should be able to then stay healthy, or hopefully they can stay healthy to prove that what they're trying to do offensively, at least, can be successful down the road when you need to win the games that matter the most. Because what we saw last year at their peak as of now, they were incapable of doing that, and they only scored. Was it 17? Did we win 20-17? Was that the final score? I don't remember. They only
in Miami week 17.
Yeah.
Or week 18, 21-14.
Okay, 14. Yeah, I knew it was in the teens. I was going to say less than 20 points. I knew it was under 20. So they scored less than 20 points in a game they had to have. Then the following week in cold weather, they could do nothing. Absolutely nothing. So this year, they have to prove themselves at a much higher level. And if they are unable to win the division, if they are unable to put that stamp as they are one of the teams in the AFC, I think psychologically it's all downhill from here. And realistically, I think that pressure alone is massive. It could literally cost their coach his job, depending on how the season goes. Even if they go 9-8, I think there's a world where their coach gets fired because of it, because it's just not good enough. And clearly they need to do something else from in-house to make it successful.
I don't like what just happened. I think you just talked me into it, because a lot of the reasons you gave, I was putting on the Jets side of things and thinking, well, the Dolphins just signed McDaniel to an extension. They just signed Tua to an extension. These guys aren't playing for their jobs. These guys are locked in, looking at that as like a positive for those guys. But I think when you zoom out a little bit and you look at what it really means, if this season goes south for the Jets, what are they really missing out on? The Rodgers thing didn't work. Okay. He tore his Achilles 3 plays into his career. What are you going to do? Just put it in the long list of things that happened to the Jets. You fire Joe Douglas, you fire Robert Saleh. The defense is still there. Garrett Wilson is still there. Breece Hall is still there. It's still New York City. You'll find a quarterback, you'll find a head coach, and you'll make another run. So yeah, I get it. From a Dolphin standpoint, you just pot committed to these guys. If they can't get it done this year, when the Bills are playing with one arm tied behind their back, national perspective wise, and the Jets are, kind of piecing it together, but the Rodgers age thing, if you can't get it done this year and you're like, what the hell? Like, we just committed to these guys and they can never get it done. The game you just referenced against the Bills in Miami, 0 points in the second half. So
yeah,
you talked me into it. I was ready to fight you on that and say, no, it's the Jets. Like, they have 1 year left of Rodgers. It's now or never. And Robert Saleh, like, his career's on the line. But if you're a Jets fan, you're not having an empty feeling like the Dolphins. As a fan, if you're a Jets fan and this season goes south, yeah, you're pissed, but fire everybody. Like, keep the stars, and we'll find a new GM. We'll find a new head coach. We'll find a new quarterback. And holy cow, that'll revive all of our energy, because we've done that dance before. And it probably won't be that bad because it's a good team. The Dolphins, it's like, well, we got to run it back because we committed to all these guys. Ooh, okay, you talked
I
me
will
into it.
say Mike McDaniel won't actually get fired if they go 9-8. It's just something where you will instantly regret extending him.
Oh,
And it's realistically like he could only have one more year left until
mhm.
that trigger's finally pulled. Because to find it, so we got to move on here. But the point really is there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even in failure for the Jets. Where is that light at the end of the tunnel in failure for the Dolphins?
I'm with
And
you.
that is how you create pressure. That is how you create misery. And the Dolphins have so much pressure on them, not only just to make the playoffs, but to have success, win the division, so on and so forth. You're just stacking on all these things. I think it's a great question, Josh. I love shooting that one at me, but I feel like I've been in a minority thinking that for all this time now, to be honest, because it really is what I have felt this entire. It's all pressures on the Dolphins, but again, in betting terms, I don't have this bet. I would feel sick to my stomach if I had this card in my hand. The Dolphins are the value play to win the AFC East. They are
Mhm.
the third betting favorite to win the division, and I think that's irresponsible. So if you're not a Bills fan and your fandom tells you to do otherwise, like any neutral listener out there, if you exist, I would tell you Dolphins is a great value bet because all pressure, all eyes are on them, not just to have success, but that success needs to lead to a division title. It has to in that world.
How do you stack the quarterbacks in 2024? Allen 1.
Allen won. I will, I'll give Tua his props. I'll
Yeah.
at this point in time, Tua 2, Rodgers 3, Drake May 4, Jacoby Brissett 5.
I mean, yeah, at that point, who cares? But yeah, and you can't ignore the fact Tua has McDaniel and he has Hill and he has Waddle. Like that helps. And it's the whole package. So I'm with you. Okay. That was fun. So the Bills now are 3-3. They come home for a 1 p.m. game. The Bills are
Hey.
undefeated at home 1 p.m. games against a Titans team, Luka, that I think is interesting. And this is another question I'm going to ask you later. I think the Titans are a team that are going to be better than we think. And I think some of that is because they're in a division that I think all the other teams in the division get overrated for various reasons. So I think by default, the Titans are going to be better than we think. But they've made some sneaky good moves this offseason. I like a lot of the moves they've made on defense. They made a trade last week with the Rams for a linebacker that I thought was a really, really sharp move. I like adding Calvin Ridley to the mix with DeAndre Hopkins because those are just two receivers you can throw it up to with Will Levis and you can go get it. And I honestly think, as silly as this is going to sound, when a team moves away from being a run first, live and die by the run, I think there's a bump they get by embracing the pass. And I think the Titans might get that bump this year. All that said, home, 1 p.m. I have the Bills win this game. One, because I still don't love Will Levis. I think Will Levis,
You don't like mayonnaise?
I don't, there's just something off. And I know he has like the peaks and valleys, but even his peaks, I don't feel like I'm watching a special player. Like in Josh Allen 2018, those plays were like explosive, magical plays where it's
Yeah.
like, holy cow, channel that. Will Levis, it's like he falls into it. I don't know. I like him. I don't love him. And if I were a Titans fan, I'd be really ready to like move on if this year doesn't go well, which I would think they would be. It's only a second round pick. First year without Vrabel. This is just not a game I think the Bills will lose. I think it'll be more challenging than people want to expect, maybe kind of like the Cardinals game for different reasons. But I think this could be one of those like ugly defensive battles that we're all kind of uncomfortable about, but the Bills still win, but we're not like thrilled about it.
This is a get right game. All things I think you said are valid, and I'm going to be nice and shorter here because I know we're on
Yeah, yeah.
almost an hour and a quarter here, and we got a lot more to talk about. But everything you said is valid. I think the Titans are something that nationally they're being slept on. Another Rich Eisen show poll here. I love when callers do predictions and they love to talk about how they are the team that anyone calls in. Josh, if the Titans are on the schedule, oh yeah, that's a win. That's a win. Write it off. It's a win. It's a win. It's a win. And I think that's dangerous because it's just clearly something's going on here. All these teams are in the NFL. All these teams make moves. All these teams are looking to get better. You have a quarterback that's now had a full offseason in the system. You've brought in additions. I think their additions were very underrated overall. I'm with you on that, especially on the defensive side, particularly. But this is, look, the Bills are the Bills and the Titans are the Titans. And I don't believe in Will Levis at all. I don't think putting mayonnaise in coffee is a ploy, and everything like that. It's not the life you want to be known for. Shout out Will Levis and that weird situation going on. I think it's Mayo Cologne now that he's pushing there. But overall, this is the game where, coming off a loss Monday night against the Jets, Josh Allen's going to have a get right. The Bills are going to have a get right. And as I mentioned before with the Texans, this is where things are really starting to click now. I think this is potentially where those safety question marks, at least we have our two stable guys understanding where they need to be, how to operate a McDermott system. And this is where the defensive mindset of McDermott and the skill that he has with DBs especially starts to shine in that world. And then on top of it, the offense is starting to maybe look like a finely tuned engine here, and they're getting production every series, or at least most series in the game. And I think this is kind of that runaway game where maybe it's within a score at halftime, but after halftime, this is where they take over. The adjustments come, and it's a rookie head coach. It's a second-year quarterback on the other side, and Josh Allen shines in the second half to kind of run away with it.
All right, Luka, you just mentioned something that's interesting. If there's no injuries, who are the Bills' starting safeties at this point?
Taylor Rapp, obviously. My heart says Bishop. I really think that they're trying to get Bishop in that spot. I think he shined enough when he was healthy early on in training camp that they like him. But realistically, understanding how it works, both with McDermott and his history, as well as just who's going to be available, Edwards will be the other guy. And I think Edwards will be serviceable enough. He'll finally have his feet wet, and he'll be understanding things by the second third of the season.
I'm with you. I think the only caveat to that is if Cam Lewis starts the season and does well for himself, and then it'll be tricky to get him off the field. I think Bishop will play in spots like maybe the Poyer role last year, where he comes on as like a nickel linebacker or a dime backer, if you will. But yeah, I with games against the Niners, and this is a short week off a Monday night, it's hard to imagine them making a switch there. Maybe after the bye is when you look at it. Who knows? But yeah, we're kind of sharing a brain there. Okay, so the Bills are 4-3. They head to Seattle. They've yet to win 2 games in a row. Interesting Seattle Seahawks group coming up here, Luka. They have some weapons. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is actually going to end up being their number 1 receiver this year. They have a coaching change. No longer is it Pete Carroll chewing gum very
That's
strongly.
A hot fantasy take, by the way. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but that is a hot fantasy take.
Oh, okay. Buy Jackson Smith and Jigba. Just been paying attention to some stuff coming out of Seattle. Buy some JSN stock. And yes, sell your DK Metcalf stock. And buy your Kenneth Walker stock, by the way. Don't give up on that dude. Yeah. I think he's going to be a 3-down back for them. I really do.
Okay.
That's an aside. They have some weapons. I think they can put up some points on the Bills. I'm not sure that their defense is necessarily built to stop the Bills. I think the bloom is off the Tariq Woolen thing. I'm having the Bills win this game, Luka. I know I'm stalling here. I'm having the Bills win this game. I don't think Tyrell Dodson is a great answer for solving Kincaid or solving Josh Allen. But at the end of the day, I think without Pete Carroll, who, to his credit, as annoying as he was, never flinched on the sideline, was always cool in those awkward, like chaotic situations, kept his team. I don't know that first-year head coach Mike McDonald is going to do the same. And I just trust Josh Allen over Geno Smith. I think I think I've already used this term. I think the bloom is off the rose for Geno a little bit. It was a cool story a couple years ago, career backup that kind of revitalized his career. But I think as the games have piled up, we've kind of seen more and more of the old Geno. And I would not be stunned if by this point in time, Sam Howell is taking snaps for this team. I just really wouldn't. And that would make me feel a little worse about this game, because that would mean that Sam Howell's probably playing well. But with all that said, I think the Bills win this game.
So it's funny that you bring up the Sam Howell thing, because that was what I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
Man, we watch too much ball. So what I think is funny is the Seahawks are going to find early success. If you looked at the Seahawks schedule prior to this game, this very much like the Texans game. All right, this is what the lead up's going to be. They open up against the Broncos. They then are at the Patriots. They host the Dolphins. They're at the Lions. That's a tough 2 game. Then they get the Giants. then they host the Niners, then they're at the Falcons. Now, that's not the easiest schedule in the world, of course, but you have mixed in with those hard games, you have what I would consider layups in the NFL. That's what they are. And I think that's where the Seahawks are going to be bouncing back and forth. And it's a situation where you could get a little bit of the backup being seen in those tough games, like against Miami or against the Niners, however those games go. That's where I could see that. And then by this point, maybe the Falcons game doesn't go their way. And they're like, let's give Howell a shot. Let's see what he's got. And that's where you could see him introduced in this game at home against the Bills. Where that becomes problematic is you don't want your first game to be against a good team like the Bills, regardless of what you want to say. Like we've been talking about, this is where I think the defense is starting to show why McDermott is a defensive-minded coach and why he's had success in this level for a long period of time. And I don't believe in the Seahawks at all. I'm just going to put the graphic up there now. This is maybe, wink, wink, where I start to see the Bills show the class of who they are and where a run could really start to go. And this is another one where it's funny. The thing I think about the Seahawks is that Monday night game where we were all mad at Richard Sherman running into the kicker late and basically almost killing our kicker. And then Robert Woods just couldn't figure it out as our number one receiver to get us the win with Tyrod at quarterback. That's the thing I remember with the Seahawks last against the Bills. Overall, I feel like they've been irrelevant since, even though they've made the playoff since. Of course, and Pete Carroll being gone, as much as I despise the man for everything he's done to my life, both as a USC head coach and as a Seahawks head coach, I am so happy to see him gone. And overall, though, it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride in Seattle with a new guy there. And I feel like you're going to see a little bit of a split with the Seahawks entirely, where you have younger, newer regime, and then you still have some of those guys who are more Carroll guys that are not going to be happy with what they're seeing and dealing with. And if you have a division in the locker room, guess what? A great team like the Bills coming to town is not a good time. And that's where you can be exposed. And I actually think this will be easier than a lot of people think.
Like it. I hope so. It'd be nice. Week 9, the Bills are back home off of a 2-game winning streak, and this is a huge game. 1 p.m. against the Miami Dolphins, and the Bills will have already lost a game to Miami earlier in the year, and for the Miami Dolphins, this is one of those games where if they win this one, it's like they can put the Bills behind them, and they can start really focusing on the Jets and the rest of the division, assuming the rest of their season's gone as we expect. I'm going to have the Bills win this game, Luka. It's one of those things where I think the teams are pretty close. I'm not comfortable having either team sweep the other one right now. I think I'd be a little more comfortable having the Bills sweep the Dolphins if that week 2 game wasn't such a funky spot. But right now, based on everything I've seen from the Dolphins, based on what I've seen McDermott be able to throw to Tua, especially in that second meeting, I really feel like, the Bills are going to have a real good look at winning this game week number 9. We've already kind of talked about this matchup a little bit in week 2, not going to rehash a lot of it, but I think this is kind of like a nice little stretch of games here for the Bills, and it keeps going here with Miami.
Yeah, we don't need to rehash all the individual things about Miami. This is, hey, if the Bills are losing the week 2 game like we've both predicted, this is that kind of correction game. And it's a classic spot where if you're tracking what we've done here, Josh, and everyone else listening, the Bills are currently 0-2 in the division.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot go 0-3 in the division. And I think that will be felt in the building with the Bills. You're at home. The weather's starting to turn at that point. I'm not saying it's going to be snowy, of course, but understanding week 9, that puts you late October time. Hold on, let me see, September, maybe even early November if I don't have my date in front of me, which I don't. But overall, that's when weather's turning. It's not a great time if you're from Miami coming up to Buffalo. And Josh Allen's motivated. A motivated Josh Allen, a motivated McDermott, a motivated locker room against a Dolphins team that probably doesn't want to be there. That sounds like success to me. And overall, yeah, we share a brain on this one. Bills are winning and will be moving to 6-3.
Let's take a timeout, Luka.
Oh boy.
We focus on the Bills a lot. We dive into other teams. We really enjoy that. How do you think people who cover other teams but take an educated look at the Bills feel about the Bills this year?
This is going to be that step back. I think this is going to be the bumpy road. This is where Josh Allen won't be that number 2 quarterback in the league. This is where, McDermott might get exposed a little bit as a coach overall for a team. And it's like, yeah, he's a great defensive mind, but this is why you don't hire defensive minded coaches with elite quarterbacks or, things like that. I think that's what I would believe. Let's say other people for other teams in our similar space would feel the Bills are going into the season, because there's no history with what's going on beyond Allen and McDermott. And it did feel like when all of those cuts came in the offseason and kind of the era change occurred, people don't want, without looking under the hood, without really understanding it fully, they just believe, okay, this is where you take that step back. And a step back for the Bills is not going and only winning 4 games, of course, but overall it's a step back from winning 11 to 13 games. It's like, okay, so they're probably going to win 9 to 10 games now. Like they're going to struggle to get a wild card spot. That's where the Bills should be now, because they have to take a step back. I think that's where people in this space would be outside of Bills bubble.
Reminds me a lot of the Rams after they won their Super Bowl, where they had to cut some salary. They, in the span of 2 years, got rid of Von Miller. They couldn't keep him. Andrew Whitworth retired. A year later, they were trading Jalen Ramsey. So, but they built it back up pretty quick. And unlike the Rams, who are on an aging quarterback, like there's a lot to like here about Josh Allen. But I think that the Bills are going to have to do what the Rams have done and really hit on some draft picks. They struck gold with Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua, and the Bills are hoping that between their 8 picks that made the team, that they have some gold to strike here, and that's going to be important as the Bills get to this next phase. But I'm with you. I think the national perspective, even recognizing the fact that the Hydes, the Poyers, the Morses, the Diggses weren't the best versions of themselves, the Tre'Davious Whites, those are still spots to fill. And who knows if the Bills have done it, because they've largely done it with guys who were backups on the team last year. So to assume that they're going to be upgrades would be an interesting assumption. All right, week 10, the Bills head to Indianapolis at a game that Luka will be attending, I believe, to take on Anthony Richardson and those Indianapolis Colts. This will be the Bills' 4th matchup against AFC South teams. So far, Luka and I have them winning all 3. And I think it continues this week against the Colts. This one I went back and forth on, because it's one of those games where even if you think the Bills are going to win, you feel like you want to give them a loss that maybe you don't see coming. And I respect the Colts. I respect Shane Steichen. I respect the fact that I think his offense, very RPO heavy, is very friendly to Anthony Richardson. And they play better in their own building. It seems like they have a couple games a year where they just look unstoppable, and then they're inconsistent. But I just look at this roster top to bottom, and I'm left wanting more. I think Jonathan Taylor's excellent. I think Michael Pittman's good, not great. Pearson, Downs to me are just kind of guys. I know you're a bigger Downs fan probably than me at this point. Their safeties are okay. Blackman can't stay healthy. Average linebackers. DeForest Buckner is excellent, but who knows if Letu can stay healthy. He's a guy they really rolled the dice on in the draft. I just don't see a lot of star power on this team. And unlike the Bills, who have a proven quarterback that we think is going to be able to carry them without having the stars, I don't know that Richardson's ready to do that just yet. So I think the Bills will go to Indy. It won't be easy, but they'll get an ugly win, and they will be on a 4-game winning streak.
Yeah. I'll be quick with it. Overall, we share a brain. I think it's a win. I think it won't be as pretty. I do think you're reading myself right on this. I believe in the Colts a little bit more than I would say the national average is. Josh Downs, I do like, and I do still like him a lot, and I think it will be an impact loss. But let's not forget they drafted a guy that I think we also enjoyed going into this year, Donnie Mitchell, and he's definitely, I think, turned some heads for the Colts overall. I'm not sure how impactful he'll be, but I also still believe in Alec Pierce. I think Pittman's solid. Pittman's one of those guys where I wouldn't put him, I don't even know if I necessarily put him top 20 in the league. He balances around there, but he's dependable, and that's what gets him there. I don't think there's anything about Pittman's game that you question mark or feel like he will get exposed because of or anything like that. I think he's dependable, he's reliable, and he's there, and he will do his job exactly how you expect it. and there's value in that being exactly what you expect to be. I think Jonathan Taylor almost might have a little bit of a needs to prove it year. And where I think the balance might be better is the Colts now with Anthony Richardson this year, instead of having Gardner Minshew as the direct backup for Richardson. I think the smartest thing they did was go and take advantage of Joe Flacco's little resurgence here. He's a Super Bowl MVP. Let's not forget. I will not forget, because I think it's the funniest and most amazing thing of all time. And Nick Foles won an MVP, Super Bowl MVP, and Joe Flacco's now their backup. And I think there is serious value in that for a guy like Anthony Richardson, just to understand the day-to-day. This is how to be a pro. This is how you can find success. And it's not like he has to point to something like his Super Bowl MVP year. He can quite literally point to the previous season where he got up off his couch, showed how to be a pro's pro, and got a team in the playoffs. So I think there's a lot going in favor for the Colts. I think they can be a good team. They're not a great team, and the Bills are a great team because they have 17, they have McDermott at coach, and they still have very good players surrounding there elsewhere. It's still even on the defensive side, but again, this is where I think the offense is starting to shine. This is maybe where Kincaid's starting to figure things out. James Cook is still motoring away, and things are going well for the Bills. That it's not like going to the Colts. It's not exactly what I would define as a daunting environment. It's not a place you don't want to play. It's a perfect environment when it comes to it's in a dome, and Josh Allen sure loves domes. So yeah, just it feels, it smells. Don't overthink it here, Josh. This is you just write the win and move on to a big week.
Huge week. 4-game winning streak from 3-3 to is the Bills season unraveling? They've lost 2 AFC East games in a row. 4-game winning streak, beat the Dolphins, beat the Colts, beat the Seahawks, beat the Titans. Everybody's saying, holy cow, Josh Allen's the MVP. Are the Bills the best team in the AFC? Was Stephon Diggs holding the Bills back? Is Sean McDermott coach of the year? If the Bills beat the Chiefs, is this finally a sign that it's their year? The Bills are at home, Luka, against the Chiefs, 425. I'll let you go first.
This might be, Josh, where we finally disagree on a result, because like the Dolphins circled week 2 when the schedule came out, and this is the get right game for them. Week 11 at home is the ultimate redemption for 17, for McDermott, and for this roster. And whereas, yes, we haven't had playoff success against the Chiefs, we do have regular season success against the Chiefs. And you have them. It's going to, of course, be a playoff-like environment. And I think the Chiefs have shown, although I do not believe that it will be the case this year at all for the Chiefs, but the Chiefs have shown that it's not like they put their best foot forward week in, week out throughout a regular season. They have times, mainly on the road, where they might lay a little short. And I think this could be a situation overall. I got to pull up the Chiefs schedule just to remind myself what it looks like. I feel like when I looked it up, overall, this spot favors the Bills so well. If the Bills played the Chiefs where they did the Ravens, I think this is a loss. But because of where they have this on the schedule, I think this will work great in their favor. And overall, I think this is the get right for the Bills. This is a statement. I don't think this is sharing the thought of this is now, are they the best in the AFC? Because I will say this. Let me reiterate it one more time. I don't think the Chiefs will be stumbling very much in this season. And spoiler alert, if we get to our conference predictions, there's probably going to be a very familiar name at the top of the AFC conference. And that might be this one that unfortunately wears red.
Well, then we're just not going to get there. Sorry, buddy.
But overall, in this game, in week 11, when it comes to mid to late November at Highmark Stadium, I was about to say at the Ralph, at Highmark Stadium, the Bills will be getting a win against 15 in red in the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think the Bills will be favored in this game. 4-game winning streak.
Whoa.
4-game winning streak. Regular season success against the Chiefs. People looking back and saying, wait a minute, Tyler Bass missed a kick. Stephon Diggs dropped a ball. They had Luka out there trying to cover Travis Kelce.
Jeez.
Like the Bills play well against the Chiefs. And then you'll turn on Fox Sports and you'll see that punchable face of Nick Wright. He'll just be smirking. He's like, good. Say it all. Say it all. Tell me how Josh Allen's better than Mahomes. Tell me all this stuff. Yeah, the Bills should be favored. And guess what? The Bills win. Nick Wright's going to come on and bet. Great. I'll see you in the playoffs. We all know what's going to happen. He's always going to move the goalposts. We get it. I have the Bills losing this game. I don't think that the Bills are going to win 5 games in a row. I don't think that this is some kind of referendum on the Bills can't beat the Chiefs. Even if the Bills won this game, I would not say, hey, the Bills are going to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. I think we've learned that lesson now. I think it's just a week 11 game in the NFL between 2 quality teams. Somebody has to lose, and Mahomes and Reed are really good at what they do. And I just think this is one of those spots where if the Bills are coming in and they're desperate, I think that the Bills maybe have a little bit more of an edge, but coming in on a 4-game winning streak, I think the Chiefs found a little something on the road. The crowd getting into it as loud as I think it's going to be a loud crowd, and the Chiefs will embrace that. And quite honestly, I think which could be a story of the season. I think it'll be a close game. And if it comes down to the kickers, who do you trust? I'm going to take the Chiefs to win a close one. And we finally disagree. And the Bills are on a bye, Luka. And that's a perfect time for me to ask you, of the 4 teams that finished last place in the AFC last year, one of which was the Bengals. Then you also had the Patriots, the Titans, and the Chargers. I'm going to take the Bengals off the table. I think that's kind of cheating because Burrow got hurt. Which one of those 3 teams has the best chance of going to the playoffs?
So it's the classic Texans question, right? Who's the next Texans?
I was going to say worst to first, but then if the answer was none, I thought it could just fall on dead air. But I will. Which one has the best chance of going worst to first?
All right, so Titans, it's the least likely is the Patriots, for very obvious reasons. So it really, and I do believe I'm with you. I share a thought. The Bengals does feel like cheating. So you have to debate between the Titans and why am I blanking on the
Chargers?
Chargers. Thank you. I think conventional wisdom would tell you the Chargers. And I think the couple reasons are Justin Herbert just can't be that bad. And, Harbaugh came in, and Harbaugh has proven track record of +7 wins right out the gate and will find you instant success. What I will counter with is he has to change a lot over there. And I think there's a massive philosophical change happening over there. There's a reason they let all their receiving weapons go and kind of did what they did in the draft. And I think it's all calculated by him. But I do think there's going to be some growing pains in that. Not saying they're going to be an absolute train wreck, but I don't see them doing it better than the Titans. I think the Titans, out of the 2 of these teams, have a better chance going worst to first because they're also in the most susceptible or they're in a division that's easier to win, I will call it as well. So if you need to find success in a division, of course, it's better to not be in the division with the Chiefs. And, you just need to better than what we called to be an overrated Texans team, a promising but still question mark Colts team, and who knows with the Jags at this point. Doug Peterson's a great coach. I at least believe him to be. Trevor Lawrence is Trevor Lawrence, though, and who really knows what's going to happen there. So if you had to ask me that, I think it has to be the Titans.
Yeah, I think if it was worst to second, it would be easily the Chargers. But the fact that first, the bar in the AFC West is probably 13 wins minimum to get to first, if not more. Whereas you could see the AFC South being won with 10 games. It was won with 10 games last year. Can the Titans get to 11? Probably. That's where I would say that. Like they could. I wouldn't predict it, but you could talk yourself into it, particularly if they start stacking division wins. All right. The Bills come off a bye, Luka. I have them coming off of a disappointing loss in what feels like a massive home tilt against the 49ers to begin 3 straight games against NFC playoff teams from last year. And the 49ers are in town, largely considered the best roster in the entire sport, I would think. Maybe, I don't think the Chiefs have the star power they do. And, I think when you look at this matchup, there's a lot of daunting things about it. How do you see this one going?
Off a bye, the Bills are generally pretty successful. I will start there. On top of it, I think what you said is valid. The Niners are regarded, and I think I'm in the similar camp where they are the best roster overall in the league. This does feel like the final season of that being the case for obvious reasons, for not so obvious reasons. Um, this is a tough spot for the Niners. I believe that to be true. They do get the advantage of not having to play this west to east at 1:00. It's a Sunday night game, but it's a Sunday night game in Buffalo. And on top of that, I think if I were to find a way where that offense could kind of stumble a little bit more than usual and not find the success that it does, it's in an environment like wintertime Buffalo, New York. That doesn't seem like a place where you will find success with CMC and everything else involved. On top of that, I respect the Niners defense a lot, and I respect the Niners in general a lot. It feels like they're the type of team historically that has injury issues, and they're not the best when it comes to luck in that world. And if we're playing them later in the year, I expect almost for impact injuries to be there. It's not something you should ever plan for, but realistically, let me put it this way. Bosa feels overdue for a bigger injury and things like that. It just happens with these athletic freaks, and I think they're very talented, but overall, there's that. I'm not saying that's the reason of win-loss, but overall, it's something that just is on my mind when I think about this matchup. And I think it's coming off of a big win from Kansas City, but then also having the bye to make sure you're not almost like to the moon in your headspace and comfortable. I think that's a perfect thing to reset them and make sure the focus is there. And overall, I have the Bills winning this home game against a very good Niners team on Sunday night to get to 9-3 and continue to make this run going.
Wow. I was listening to a Shannon Sharp podcast interview with Marshawn Lynch, and they were revisiting the goal line run in the Super Bowl where they threw the ball instead of running the ball, and Russell Wilson famously threw the interception. And Marshawn Lynch said, and Shannon Sharp asked him, did that in the dynasty? And did that in like the Seahawks run? He said, absolutely. And when he had to explain it, he said, at that moment, instead of winning 2 Super Bowls in a row, we now had one and then we lost and we were all mad. If you win 2 in a row, you all of a sudden you have maybe the Legion of Boom being like, hey, I'll take a little less to stay here. Let's be an all-time great. Marshawn Lynch, I'll take a little less to be here. And right after that, all the guys were like, no, I want max contracts. I want max contracts. The Niners are a team now that have been to multiple Super Bowls in the past few years, lost them both. I think they're probably a little tired about hearing how talented they are. And you're starting to see a little bit of a crack in the foundation. And this isn't a bad thing. Like pro athletes should want to be paid, but you saw the thing with Ayuk. It was the entire talk of the offseason. Trent Williams is not playing right now. That's massive. And you got Christian McCaffrey dealing with soft tissue injury. To Luka's point, like you just worry about that. And I don't know. I think you kind of just start looking at this. There's like some bad vibes going on with the Niners right now. I can't really put my finger on. I think the Niners are a better football team than the Bills. I truly believe that, but I think that the quarterback can be the ultimate equalizer, and Josh Allen's better than Brock Purdy. It's in Buffalo. I think this is a game the Bills will win, and I think it'll be a wipe the taste out of your mouth game, because if the Bills lose to the Chiefs, like I have predicted them to do, I think the talk will be, okay, well, what have we really seen from this Bills team this year? They've beaten the bad teams and lost to the good teams. Like, when are they going to beat a good team? And well, here we go. They beat the Niners, and I have the Bills now at 8-4, and Luka has them at 9-3. So with that in mind, I think the season is going swimmingly, Luka. The Bills and the Niners, and the Bills here are really, I mean, they would probably be first place in the AFC East based on your projections. And then, with me, at least in the wild card conversation, if not first place in the AFC East. But we still have, it's so funny the way the schedule breaks down. Like the last 3 games are AFC East games. So kind of like last year, even if they're behind, they can make up some ground. But doesn't get any easier. They beat the Niners on Sunday Night Football, and they have to travel out west to take on the LA Rams in Los Angeles, 425 on week 14. Luka, the last time these two teams met, it was a very memorable game. Week 1, the season after the Rams won the Super Bowl. What happens in this game for you?
Nice and short and sweet. I have a lot of questions with the Rams. I really do. I love McVay, as much as it pains me to even say that. I love Stafford. It doesn't pain me to say that. I don't look at him as a Ram. He will be a Lion for life in my eyes. And realistically, it's one of those things where I think they're good. I think they're still a good team. I think they can be a playoff team. Spoiler alert. But overall, one, you lost a historic Hall of Famer in Aaron Donald on defense. So if you do not question them and what they'll look like defensively, I think you're just being ignorant, to be honest. And then two, there's starting to be a little bit of question marks now with Puka's health and what that knee situation is now that we've learned about recently. Cooper Kupp's coming back and hopefully he's at full health and he'll be great. But it's just one of those things where now Kyron Williams is going to be a punt returner and they're going to do whatever's going on with that. And I just have questions with what is going on overall there that yes, there's questions about the Bills as well, but lesser. And again, similar to like the Colts, it's not like going to LA is a daunting task and it's a conventional 425 game. It's going to feel like a 1 o'clock game to the Bills. And I don't know. It's not literally going to feel like a 1 o'clock game. It's going to feel like a 4 o'clock game. But what I mean by that is it's going to be your average game day. It's just going to be your average thing. It's not a special event like that season opener was. And at this point in time, if you haven't figured it out, this is when I really believe the Bills will start to show the class of what they are at least and why they are a great organization right now in the NFL. And this is where it's kind of happening here as they find another win now in LA against the Rams.
I'm going to have the Bills lose this game. And
Ooh.
it's not because I believe in the Rams. In fact, I don't. I believe in the head coach a lot. I believe in the quarterback a lot. I like the weapons, the receivers, particularly a little bit. And I like Kyron Williams. I think they're going to have some issues on the offensive line. And like you said, I think that the defense is an ultimate question mark. To me, this just feels like when you're picking a schedule 1-17, you've got to have that game where it's like, even though you think that the Bills are the better team, it doesn't always work out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And this just to me, after a game where the Bills put everything 2 weeks of a bye week after a huge loss to Kansas City to come out and beat the Niners and really make a statement on Sunday Night Football. Now they're going to travel west and they're going to take on a Rams team that isn't going to have as good of a record as the Niners. I think this is kind of a letdown spot. And I could just see that playing out. I do think there will be a game this year or two where Tyler Bass cost the Bills the game. I just really do. And maybe this is it. Maybe this is a game where he misses 2 or 3 field goals and the Bills end up losing by 3 points. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a frustrating game. I think it'll be a game that has us all questioning a lot of things. And it doesn't have to be any more than just they lost a game in the NFL. It happens. But it's a loss I'm going to give them regardless, even though I think that there's much better teams on their schedule, including the team that they play next week in Detroit. The Detroit Lions will host the Bills. Last time the Bills played there, it was a disaster. Von Miller tore his ACL, and that really started a downward spiral for that Bills team and really Von Miller's career. I like the Lions quite a bit, Luka. I like what they've done on both lines of scrimmage. I think they have good weapons. They made it to the NFC Championship game last year. I do think Jamison Williams has something to give this year, and I think he's a sneaky fantasy player. Sam Laporta obviously looks like a star. What do you see happening in this game?
This is a loss. This is everything that I think it can be when it comes to just I don't want to say outclassed because it's not like I think the Lions are leaps and bounds ahead of the Bills, but it's one of those ones where the Lions can absolutely punch the Bills in the mouth and win that way. I think what they have is very solid. Now, that being said, another spoiler alert, I don't think they're even the best team in their division, but I think they match up extremely well with the Bills. And overall, it's one where line of scrimmage is a lot of times when that's what you can look at and see where a win-loss happens. And I'm not thinking that the Lions necessarily are the best defensive line in the league or even elite tier, but they're okay it's where they're going to win is the offensive line and the offensive side of the ball. And I really do feel like the Lions can absolutely control the Bills and pace of play and everything in between, however they please on the offensive side. And there's nothing about this game that makes me feel like the Bills are going to be able to squeak it out and make it happen like they did in Thanksgiving a couple of years ago. So yeah, this one, it's don't overthink it. Unfortunately for the Bills and Bills fans in general, this feels like a loss.
This one's tough. I don't fear the Lions defense. I think they have a good defensive line. I think that there's some plays to be made against their secondary, but this is one of those, hey, receivers, can you make those plays against a secondary? I don't know. And, if you can't, I think Brian Branch and Jack Campbell can do an interesting job on bracketing Kincaid. And then what do you do? So I look at the Lions' weapons, like you said. Um, I think Jared Goff probably still has like 1 or 2 games a year where he implodes, but I don't know if that'll be this game. I'm with you. I'm gonna have the Bills losing to this game too. I think the Bills are gonna fall to 8-6. It's gonna be a very tough spot for the Bills in our little pick 'em for me anyway. They've lost 2 in a row after a big win against San Francisco. And I want to shout out one of our friends who's a Niners fan. I didn't mention this, but Danny always tells us the Niners struggle against mobile quarterbacks. And I wanted to bring that up and I totally forgot to. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that up, because even like Lamar went there last year and we thought the Niners defense was the best in the league and Lamar just toyed with them. And I think that there's something to that. Danny, I trust him all the way when he talks about the Niners. So another thing about that, but no, on this game, I don't want to say the Lions are like outclassing the Bills, or I think these teams are probably fairly even. But again, I think that the Lions just have a lot going for them right now, and I think that they're very buttoned up in critical situations. I also think Dan Campbell is more aggressive than Sean McDermott, and I think that can really help you in a game like this. So all that adds up to me to the Bills being an 8-6 football team, and the line, and for Luka, a 10-4 football team. So Luka's Bills still looking pretty good. My Bills kind of in must win from here on out. Luckily for all of us involved, that the Patriots are up next. It's probably Drake May. Let's be honest. It's not going to matter, Luka. This Patriots team is a disaster. I like the weapons they took in the draft. I like Polk quite a bit. I like Douglas, who they got last year. I think their running backs are just Ramondre Stevenson, I think 2 years ago was fun. Not so much anymore. Hunter Henry is running out of gas, and I think that defense is totally able to be exposed at this point. They've lost a lot of their studs. And I think barring a collapse by the Bills, I don't even want to have to repeat myself week 18. I think that this Bills team should handle the Patriots. There's not Belichick standing on the sidelines anymore for McDermott to overthink things. I think the loss to the Patriots last year is going to be the best thing that happened to these Bills this year. I think they'll take care of business here. Spoiler alert. Also, I think they take care of business week 18.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. I think when we did our schedule release episode, Josh, you had said I would prefer to play the Patriots early than I would late. And I know where your thought was on that when it comes to if Drake May gets rolling, he could be a problem. I will say I like Drake May. I have, it's documented in our draft shows. I had him rated higher than Jaden Daniels. There might be a little personal reasons that sprinkled on top of why, but overall, I do believe as a pro prospect, there's a lot to like about Drake May. And I will share the same thoughts as you when it comes to, of course, you want to play them when they're not as comfortable in the league yet, which would come in early in the season. But we share a mind overall. It's like at the end of the day, the Bills are far and away far better than the Patriots, up and down. And even your X factors like a Matt Judon, he's no longer there. And it's tell me where you find the place that the Patriots are going to win this game. What is the avenue? Because even when the Bills lost in New England, what was that last year? It was like you couldn't have forecasted it then, but somehow it happened. This year, I can't even foresee anything remotely close to what that was happening this year. The Patriots are projected to have the lowest win-loss in the National Football League for a reason. If you bet their over-under on win-loss or wins, it's 4.5. And I genuinely struggle to see how they get to 5 wins. and there's good reason for that. Even Drake May, as much as I like him, I think there's going to be growing pains. And yeah, I think in week 16, this is where, the Bills ultimately will kind of, I'm not going to say it's an easy win because division games are division games, but it's going to be the easier form of a divisional game. And yeah, in my world, they officially hit the over 10.5 mark if you're tracking that. And yet again, Josh Allen shows since 2019, he has finished with at least 11 wins every season.
As far as the Patriots go, I think that I know what point I was trying to make on the draft for sure, but I also think this late in the year, it's not as consequential. I think if you would have played the Patriots like week 10, I'm assuming they're going to do what most teams do. They're going to throw out the veteran. He's going to lose his games. They're going to go to the rookie after their bye week, whenever it is. So we'll just say week 9, whatever. Drake May at this point is going to have had 6-7 games for McDermott to go really see what's going on. So it's not like you're getting him in his first start where you can really throw some curveballs at you. The other thing is, if they are as bad as the odds project them to be, as Luka and I project them to be, by the time we get to week 16, they're going to all know if we win, we could cost ourselves Luther Burden or Pierce or the best offensive tackle in the draft. Like, is it worth it for this moment?
Or if you get the top overall spot, you hope to sell it for a ransom for any other team that wants a quarterback, whatever
Right.
it might be.
Will Campbell, or maybe, I'm not the biggest Shador Sanders guy. Like, I think he's good. I don't see him as like a generational quarterback, but if he has that hype, yes, sell it for a king's ransom. They've already traded Judon for a pick. There's a lot at stake in these games for bad teams. And a coach on the first year of his deal, they're not a dumb organization. You don't go on a 20-year winning streak by being a dumb organization. I think there's a lot to be said for them not being overly motivated to win these games. Week 17, Luka, I think this is going to be, especially for you, an AFC East potential championship game. For me, it's much more of trying to keep the Bills alive in the playoff hunt. So I'll go to you first. I think your game's probably a little more interesting head to head. Second matchup with the Jets. We both had them losing to the Jets in week number 6. What do you see happening this time?
As you put it, this is where I believe the way it breaks down, both for the Bills, but around the division, this can be putting the crown on a 5th straight division title. And what would be better than just doing that and having that potential, quote unquote, air quotes if you're watching, week off going into New England in week 18? There's enough motivation to go around. You lost to the Jets earlier in the season, as we talked about. And this is also where I believe that the Jets ultimately could be starting to fall short, and Aaron Rodgers could be potentially showing his age. And it's in Buffalo. Who knows at this point of the year what the weather will be like? Hopefully it's not too bad, but ultimately I don't think it matters. I think the Bills win this game. They will be crowned division champions. Shout out us for the 5th time. And yeah, divisional champs, signed, sealed, delivered, hit the 12 win mark. Let's move on. Let's see what the playoff matchups are going to be.
I have the Bills at 9-6 coming into this game. And, I will say my one concern about the Jets is I don't think they have a lot of depth. I think they were very smart to take Fashanu over Bowers in the draft because I'm not a big believer in the Morgan Moses, Tyron Smith combination offensive line. I think with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback in 2024, if you have a bad tackle situation, you might as well just hang it up. I don't know that they have the best backup linebackers. I don't know that they have much great behind Sauce and DJ Reed. I mean, who has great third cornerbacks? I don't know. But long story short, I think there's reasons to be concerned about the Jets. But all of that being said, the same concerns I had week 6 are still here in week 17. I think the weather will be worse, which I think favors the Jets. And I'm going to say that it's not going to be popular, but I think the Jets come to Buffalo, win the game, win the AFC East.
Whoa.
And it doesn't have to be a funeral for the Bills. I think it's one of those times where we all need to remember what this year was. The Bills had some good moments, and we'll see if they make the playoffs. My projections or not. But I think this is going to be a little bit of a step back year for the Bills. And I think part of that is they don't win their fifth consecutive division title. I could be wrong. It is. I mean, we're talking like razor's edge. I would not be stunned either way. But I like the Jets roster if I knew they could stay healthy. And that's such a hard thing to know. I hate their depth, Luka. I hate their depth. And so like they lose a couple of studs and I think they could just tank.
Yeah.
But they are just built to give the Bills trouble as long as they get sufficient quarterback play. And I think they'll find a way to win an ugly game in Buffalo week 17 and they'll win the AFC East and that'll force the Bills to win to get in week 18 for me.
Mm. It's interesting how in that you believe the Jets to win the division, which I mean, it's not like it's crazy, of course, but overall, let me kick you a simple question here because
Ooh.
I will say, spoiler alert, in my scenario, I think the Bills lose week 18. In your scenario, winning in, you also tipped your hand a little bit. You
Yeah,
said they
you can
win.
go ahead and put it up there
So I'm
whenever you
gonna
want.
I'm gonna type that in after I ask this question. But realistically, to go bounce off of your previous question earlier tonight, um, the Jets winning the division, and
Mhm.
we'll get into our AFC standings. The Bills win and in, they get in. Mathematically, it's a lot harder than in this world for the Dolphins to have made the playoffs. Whether they did or not, it's fine. Regardless, Jets winning the division and everything of that nature, do you believe that this could set the Bills back in particular beyond this season by having that little bit of a letdown, even though, as you put it, it's kind of taking their medicine? And overall, can this actually propel something when it comes to a greater landscape change in the division in general? Because I will say, as I said, there is still going to be a disappointment from the Dolphin side. And I think projection wise, it's bad. But it's that one caveat where at least it wasn't the Bills winning it for the fifth time. So looking at it and spinning it a little bit, does this introduce itself where do you struggle to think how the Bills bounce back entirely with the Jets finally getting over the hump themselves and winning the division?
You know, I don't. And I think for the Bills, there's an internal belief in that building that when they have Josh Allen, the sky is still the limit. But I think there's also an understanding of what this year is. They're aware of how much dead cap they have. They're aware of what they had to do to their roster. I think that the future is going to look very bright for the Bills. I expect a couple of these draft picks to really pop this year. I don't know if it's going to be Kincaid or if it's going to be Ray Davis. And if it's Ray Davis, is that at the expense of James Cook? So does that kind of cancel out? Or maybe somebody unforeseen like Javon Solomon comes out of nowhere and becomes a huge stud. But they had 8 rookies that made this team, 9 if you count Joe Andreessen. And that's the kind of draft class, the kind of rookie class that makes you feel good about the future as long as those guys all stay on the team throughout the rest of the season and contribute in meaningful ways. You start feeling better about the depth. And they're going to have a lot of picks next year when you start factoring in compensatory picks. I liken this group of the Bills, and I'm not making this comparison because like I know this Patriots team won the Super Bowl, but to like the 2005 Patriots. By 2005, the Patriots had won 3 Super Bowls already. So that's where the comparison is a little bit off. But the Patriots were going out there and it was like they were kind of taking advantage of Tom Brady. It's like, we have Tom Brady. We're going to just build up our defense. They went into an AFC championship game in '06 with Rashae Caldwell and Jabbar Gaffney as their starting wide receivers against the Colts with Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wade. And they had a 20-point lead at one point in time, or 17-point lead at one point in time, and they lost. But it was that offseason they're like, you know what? We're gonna go out, we're gonna get Wes Welker, we're gonna get Randy Moss. Like, F this. Why are we making this harder on ourselves than we need to be? I think the Bills had to take this approach this year, but I think it's going to springboard them into being okay. That was fun. We proved to ourselves we can be good, even if we have Josh Allen and a bunch of also rans, which I think this roster is better than that. But I think the larger point will be okay, we know how good Josh Allen is. I think he's going to be in the MVP conversation, if not win the MVP. Let's go get him another dude, whether that's trading up really high in the draft. We have 2 seconds now. Minnesota's going to be bad. That second could be really high. And we package that to go up. and let's go get a dude, Luther Burden, Travis Hunter. I don't know. It all sounds good to me. Isaiah Bond. Hello. Maybe get the fast guy from Texas. Anyway, there's going to be some dudes in this draft. I think that the Bills are going to aggressively continue to put weapons around Josh Allen. I think they're going to look back on this rookie class as a foundational class for their roster, much like the Chiefs did the year after they traded Tyreek Hill. I think we're going to feel great about the Bills next offseason. And I think when you step back, and in my prediction, everything this team went through transition-wise this offseason to be a 10-7 team that's a wild card team, perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. Get in the playoffs.
Yep.
With Josh Allen, see what happens.
Yep.
You have, unless you're playing the Chiefs, for my money, the best player on the field is on your team, and he plays the most impactful position. So see what happens.
Yeah, no, that's all fair. I will say, like, it was funny when I was going through this, and I really wanted to try to find more losses, and the losses are there. Like, let's not kid ourselves. It's the National Football League, Josh. Of course, you can lose any given Sunday, as that classic saying goes. But it's I think Josh Allen as an ultimate X factor in this league, and things like that. Yes, it's not going to be smooth. It's weird to say that 12-5 won't be smooth, but it won't. I don't think it'll be as bumpy though as last year. And that's kind of where my head was at. I think last year, even though it didn't look like it personnel wise, and it was like that was a team that was supposed to compete and came a Diggs drop short of really getting past the Chiefs hump finally in the playoffs. I'm not even going to blame Bass in this. I'm literally blaming that Diggs drop because that's what it felt like. I think that all said and done, that was what Bean had recognized as that. And I do question if there really is that big of a drop off as a 53-man roster, even though there's a lot of inexperience now here. That's where the quality of coaching comes through. That's where your next factor can still be a guy. And ultimately, there's not a lot of veteran voices going on, and you have a singular message going across the board. And I think there's value in that, where realistically, I just think that there's still path to success for this team that I don't necessarily see how it takes another step back, because yes, they won a lot of games last year. They got the 2 seed and won the division, but overall, I looked at last season as kind of the most odd step back possible while still finding success. And this can actually be either a lateral situation, if not a kind of low key step forward and building foundation moving into the next generation of this team. So that's kind of where my thought was on the season. So that's why I was there.
Last year felt miserable.
Yeah.
It just felt like, if you watch the Patriots dynasty, even the year they won against the Rams, the last time they won the Super Bowl, it's like they were all just tired of each other. That's what last year. I think this year, even in my scenario where they go 10-7, I think it's going to feel like a breath of fresh air. And look at if you just fast forwarded to get to this point to see what the records were, I totally respect it. When I predicted them to lose to the Rams, my reasoning was the Bills are the better team, but it's the NFL. Losses like this happen, and so you could easily flip that one.
Yeah.
When I predicted them to lose to the Jets week 17, I said coin toss game. I just think it's the Jets' year to win the division. No big deal. You could flip that one. You can go up and down the list. I would not be stunned, Luka. We both said confidently the Bills win week or lose week 2. Are either one of us going to be stunned if the Bills go down to Miami and just remind them who daddy is? Like, no.
No.
So I think you start looking at some of this stuff, and the Jets are the Jets. We both picked them to lose to the Jets once. I have them losing to the Chiefs in a game where I was like, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just one of those games that happens in the league. 2 good teams play. Somebody's got to lose. That's not like super high in-depth analysis. There's wins to be had. This is not my way of telling you it's doom and gloom. I think 10-7 would be a good job by the Bills this year. To me, pass fail this year is making the playoffs. In the years past, it was really the 1 seed, or at least having a higher seed than the Chiefs. Get the Chiefs in your building. You accomplished that last year. It didn't work out. It's unfortunate. This year, I think the stakes are a little bit lower. I think the stakes are just get in, see what happens. If you have to go to Arrowhead, you go to Arrowhead. You have Josh Allen, you take your shot. You didn't set up this offseason to be an all-in year. If you somehow wind up with the 1 seed, fantastic. But I can't sit here on September 1st and predict that to happen. But one thing we can predict, Luka, is the Pro Bowl. Who on the Bills offense that has never been to a Pro Bowl do you think has a real look at it this year? And just for everybody listening's sake, that would exclude Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, James Cook, and Dawson Knox.
Well, Dawson Knox wouldn't be my choice regardless, but someone that shares a position as Dawson Knox, Josh, that was a transition, somewhat like yours. Dalton Kincaid feels like the clear defense is not this way. Let me start there. Offense, realistically, Dalton Kincaid or Shakir, those are your only two realistic answers. And Dalton Kincaid to me feels like he is primed for it. And it's really hard to, beyond injuries and unfortunate circumstances such as that, it's hard to see where success isn't coming from for him. And I think he's ready to go for a breakout, nationally be seen and everything. We saw it already last year, and this feels like a time where a continuation in this change of offense where he will really take another step forward and we will see something big out of him.
They aggressively went up and got him. Joe Brady's had an entire offseason to install his offense. The target hogs from last year are gone. And when you look at the makeup of the Pro Bowl, there's two tight ends from the AFC. One's going to be Kelsey. It's a popularity contest. He's earned that. I mean, it's a lifetime achievement award at this point. He's still excellent, but he'll make it. But
he'll be getting it when he's retired because he's got that other fandom on his side.
When you look at it, one, you hate to say this, but there's an excellent chance that Kelsey's going to be in the Super Bowl and pulling himself out of the Pro Bowl. But outside of that, that means that Dalton Kincaid really has to be better than just Mark Andrews, or if Andrews gets hurt very early in the year, Isaiah Likely and Evan Ingram. I don't think Brock Bowers is ready to really challenge for that, especially with the Raiders passing game. The best young tight ends in the league are, for the most part, in the NFC. So the deck is pretty clear. I guess Njoku still, but no. The deck is pretty clear for Kincaid, and it makes a lot of sense there. Defensively, Luka, that would discount Von Miller and Matt Milano.
Christian Benford. He needs to stay healthy, of course, but I wrote it down in my notes, and this is the only way I'll say it. If he stays healthy, this feels like the year he finally shows the league that he is the best corner you've never heard of. And that's what it feels like for Christian Benford, because we've seen it already that he is very, very good, and you never hear his name. It's almost like he doesn't exist on the field in all the best ways possible. So just please, 47 out there, stay healthy, because I want the world to know who you are finally, because you deserve it. And yeah, I'm gonna ride my horse into the sunset, Josh. Christian Benford's making the Pro Bowl. Not that it matters too much, but yeah.
I love it. I think there's a great chance that Christian Benford is considered the best defensive player on this team by the season's end. That's how good I think he is. And I think there's also a chance in that world that Kaiir Elam is no longer considered a bust. I think the Bills have a chance to have excellent cornerbacks this year, including Rasul Douglas. I don't think Taron Johnson is going to make the Pro Bowl, and I think it's largely because the Pro Bowl is outdated. They don't differentiate slot corner from boundary quarterback, and you're just not going to get a slot cornerback in there. Yeah. I went with Terrell Bernard because I think he plays a position where statistics can really carry the day. He's the only 3-down linebacker, I think, on this team right now. So he's going to rack up tackles. We know he has a nose for the splash plays, the sacks, the interceptions. He'll fill up the stat sheet. And I think if the Bills defense has success this year, which I expect they will, he'll get a lot of credit for that because Matt Milano will be gone. A lot of the names will be gone. I think this year sets up for Terrell Bernard to get the recognition if he can stay healthy. The last question, Luka. I want a bold prediction. And I'm going to give you mine first because I know that's like a weird question, right? Like, what does that even mean? I'm going to give you mine first just to give you an idea of like how strange you can go with this. My bold prediction is in the first game of the season, Keon Coleman will have 2 touchdowns.
Whoa. First game of the season, Keon gets 2.
First game of the year, Keon Coleman has 2 touchdowns. I would not be stunned if he only has like 2 the rest of the way, but 2 touchdowns week 1. I'm going to draw back to 2003. You know exactly where I'm going with this. Rookie wide receiver out of Florida State, second round pick,
God.
was going head to head with a receiver who was picked very high in the draft, who was considered one of the best prospects we'd ever seen. R.I.P. Charles Rogers. Very sad story. He did not work out in the NFL. That is unfortunate. Not making a joke out of that. And Charles Rogers was on my fantasy team. He had 2 touchdowns that day. He only had like 34 yards. He was a rookie, whatever. But holy cow, this rookie from Florida State, Anquan Bolden, arrived on the scene. He had 10 catches for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think this game sets up big time for Keon Coleman. One, I think there is a very high likelihood that Curtis Samuel sits. The turf toe, I think they could look at this and say, let's buy him 4 extra days and then give him 11 days off. So that would force Keon Coleman into an every down role in this game. And I think this game has shootout potential. I think Keon Coleman is going to be one of the Bills' biggest red zone targets. So if Josh Allen, per se, were to go in and throw for 4 touchdowns in this game, I think there's a very good chance that Keon Coleman gets 2 of those. I don't think he's going to duplicate the 212 yards receiving, but I think you could look at a situation where Keon Coleman catches 6 passes for 65 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think we're all feeling great about him after that. So I have Keon Coleman scoring twice week 1 in my bold predictions. And if you have him in fantasy, sell.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Bold prediction. And this is something, it's funny because I had no idea that this question was going on. But overall, my bold prediction, it's something I've kind of trickled with. I even teased it a little bit in my eyes with doing it for an offensive Pro Bowler, Josh. O'Cyrus Torrence is going to be listed as a second team All Pro guard.
Really?
I believe in this guy. And I honestly, it's like, it's so strange to me that PFF, for instance, doesn't rate him higher. Because every time I watched him last year, I'm like, this guy, he's a phone book guard. That's what he is, or phone booth guard.
Phone booth, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, phone book.
So
phone
short.
Booth guard. Look, it's 12:20 a.m. where I'm
Yeah,
currently
it's late.
recording right now. It's late.
Hey, it's Monday for you.
Yeah, it is Monday.
Today when you're listening.
So, but I love him so much. And I'm not saying he's first team All Pro, but he's going to be an All Pro guard, or at least be looked at as a potential All Pro guard. Let me just pull it back just a touch because it's tough. I mean, you got to be one of 4. So, or 2 realistically, if you do right, left independently. But overall, I believe in him so much. And I think he is quite literally the reason that Spencer Brown found success last year, because Spencer Brown finally had a guy next to him that he could fully trust inside and allow him to focus on everything on the edge and so on and so forth. And I think O'Cyrus Torrence is finally going to get recognition that he deserves. I think he's going to showcase why he was projected to be potentially a first round guy that somehow fell to where he did for the Bills. And God bless it. Thank you so much that happened. And overall, I love his play. I love everything about him. Obviously, if he's being mentioned in All Pro, Josh, he's also someone I consider to be a first time Pro Bowler. Hopefully he's not a Pro Bowler because they have better things going on. Not that I believe that will be the case, I will say, but overall, that is my bold take. I think O'Cyrus Torrence is going to, it feels like out of nowhere. I think if you really watch the Bills, it doesn't feel entirely out of nowhere, but I think this is where you see why he was projected as the best guard of his draft class, and overall why he can be a potential stud at the position for these Bills.
I said that was the last question, but I never did get the answer. Where does the Bills season end, Luka?
Bill's season will end with a loss. It's going to sound like a broken record here, Josh. It's going to end with a loss in the divisional round.
To who?
They will be losing in Baltimore.
Okay.
Once again.
I'll take
to
it.
the Ravens. Yeah.
I'll take it.
Just projected AFC standings. You know what? Let's transition here, Josh, real quick. It's a long episode. I'm going to drive the ship all the way through. I have projected AFC and NFC standings just for fun. Mm-hmm. My projected AFC standings, no records attached to this, but just going through it, I did try to do win-loss the best I could. Kansas City is the 1, Baltimore is the 2, Buffalo is the 3, Indianapolis as the 4 in the division winner for the South, Cincy as the 5, Houston as the 6, Miami squeaks in as the 7. So we differentiate a lot, I will say right out the gate, on the Jets, for 1. And 2, I think Cincy as a 5 is only because I just do not believe in Cleveland or Pittsburgh, where they're going to be able to get a couple more wins where they need to in tiebreakers to get above the Houston Texans, just for
Mhm.
what it's worth. I don't think they're actually better than the Houston Texans. I just think their record will reflect it as such.
Interesting. I have Kansas City as the 1. I would have the Jets in this scenario as the 2.
Okay.
I have okay, let me think about this. The Ravens as the 3.
Okay.
I do have the Ravens repeating. I don't believe in the Brown situation. If they had a quarterback I believed in, I'd love to see what happens if Winston got all 17 games, but I think he could kind of mess it up too. But I can't stand Watson, and not just like as the person. I think he's totally washed. And then I'm going to go with the Jaguars as the 4. I do not believe in that team. I believe in the coach, and I just think when you look at the 4 teams in the AFC South, they're the team I have the least amount of questions about.
Mm.
Putting I'm putting the Bills 5th, and I know they're 10-7, but it's kind of like I think there's going to be a lot of teams in the AFC that are like 10-7, 9-8. Like I think that's where, because I think the Dolphins are also going to sneak in, and then the other team would be the Texans in that scenario. So
Okay.
the Colts don't make it, and the Bengals don't make it. I don't know what goes wrong with the Bengals in my mind, but it's just
There's serious questions about Burrow. Like
mhm,
I will say ex-pros have come out and said that following that wrist surgery, they only have a maximum of 65 to 70% movement lifetime in their wrist now.
mm,
And look, as a throwing hand wrist, like
mhm.
feels like full range of motion is pretty important. So it will be intriguing to see that. I just think, you still have Jamar Chase eventually. T. Higgins is going to be well motivated to have a good year. Things
Mhm.
like that are going to happen. And I like the coaching. They're a good team. They're going to find success somehow. I will say it does feel like this is the start of a little bit of a downturn for them, but cheap ownership will probably drive that ship. And yeah, that's where it is. What I will ask before I then also give my AFC winner prediction. Are the Bills losing to then the Jags in this first round matchup?
That's the beauty of my prediction, Luka. The Bills have not won a road playoff game. A road playoff game. Let me think about this. Since 1992, when they
Was
beat
it
the
Miami?
Dolphins in the championship game to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I remember it like
So
it was yesterday. I was just born.
yeah,
No, not
because
even.
they had beaten the Steelers the week before, and then all their other
Yeah,
wins have been at home. Um, they get it done this year, and I think the South gives them the best chance to do that. I
of
would not
course.
feel good about them going to Baltimore. I wouldn't feel terrible about it. Like not like the Ravens just show up in the playoffs, but no, I'm gonna say that the Bills do win on Wild Card Weekend. They get that thing checked off, and then they go round 2. And I don't really even have a team that they. I guess it would. God damn it, it'd be the Chiefs, wouldn't it?
It
'Cause
sure
it
would.
sure would, wouldn't it?
Most likely in that world, yes, unless you have another upset somewhere and then they're going to the Jets,
Yeah.
which wouldn't that be interesting if the Jets also won? If the Jets somehow Jets, that would be also interesting. But um
I was
uh
I was very tempted. I almost want to flip it and have the Bills in wild card round beat the Jets in New York.
that would be great.
After like they lose the division and they're like, okay, cool. By the way, we're still here.
Yeah.
But
No.
yeah, I basically, long story short, I have the Bills winning a playoff game even as a road team, and then coming up short in the playoffs.
Quickly, your AFC winner is
I just I you go first. I don't want to just like go chalkety chalk, but holy cow.
your Baltimore Ravens will be the AFC winners after they go into Kansas City and win. That will be your AFC championship. The Ravens will get over the Kansas City hump. I think there's there's something about the Ravens that I respect, of course. There's something about Harbaugh that I respect. And overall, I just think if they were to have the rematch like it is, but reversed location, I think you would also have another situation where the Ravens have a little bit added motion, added motivation. And on top of it, I think that's finally where Kansas City could start to feel a pressure of a three-peat situation, historical things. And that's something that I don't believe Kansas City's really ever felt before or experienced where, like when was the last time you could honestly remember that Patrick Mahomes and such, you can say the road playoff thing from last year, sure. But I think the historical measure of being the first three-peat will be so great that a motivated Ravens team on the road feeling like I'm not going to say they're feeling like they're playing with house money, but feeling confident in themselves and feeling like there's far less pressure on them to achieve whatever it is, that could be a scary thing for Lamar. So yeah, I there's something about the Ravens going into this year. I think they Derrick Henry is a great addition, and if he can stay healthy and they just do their thing, they're always great defensively. Yeah, I like the Ravens over the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, to be honest.
And they win the Super Bowl?
No.
Niners?
No.
Ooh. Packers?
Packers. Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers will be beating the Baltimore Ravens in the Super Bowl. That is going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Packers, for what it's worth. NFC standings real quick. Not that anyone cares probably listening to this. Eagles, Niners, Packers, Bucks, Lions, Rams, Falcons.
Read that back to me again.
Eagles as the 1 seed, Niners, Packers, Buccaneers, then Lions is the 5, Rams is the 6, Falcons is the 7, and honestly, 6 and 7 with the Rams Falcons, it's not like I like them. I just think they get in by default.
I love the Falcons pick. If Ryan stays healthy, even if he doesn't, I think they're actually insulated well with Penix. I think the Bears make the playoffs this year.
I like Caleb Williams. I love what they did right out the gate to support him. I love what they'd been doing with the defense as well. It's hard for me to believe that a rookie, I mean, look, we just saw it happen, but there's a reason why that was so special. There's a reason that it was so crazy that it happened last year. Like Stroud doing that last year was just like, holy crap. So that's because when you come back to earth and you realize what happens, it's not all like Cam Newton had an exceptional rookie year. They didn't even sniff the playoffs. Like you can still be exceptional in your rookie season. It's a team game. It's a team sport. It takes a lot to make the playoffs. If you have a division with the Packers, who I believe will be winning the division, I imagine you probably think the Lions or maybe the Packers are winning.
I'm Packers.
Okay.
I'm high on Packers.
Packers and Lions are clearly a step above them. To me, that's already 3 to 4 losses. You really can't buy a whole lot else. And, when it comes to loss, adding on that, I could see them going like 8 and 9. I could buy that. I would absolutely buy them going 8 and 9. Them making playoffs, though, I think that's a stretch.
I'm disappointed that we're sharing a brain on the NFC because I thought my Packers poll was going to be a little bit trendy. I didn't want to go rematch. I have the Chiefs winning the whole thing. One, they have. So a lot of it for me is who's going to get the bye, and they have the easiest path to the bye, just the easiest path. I mean, they're going to get 4 wins without even moving a muscle against the Broncos and the Raiders. And then and I know they lost to both those teams last year, but I just can't take either of those teams seriously. And I do think that the Chargers are closer to rebuilding than they are to like really contending. So then I just kind of think, okay, the playoffs are going to go through Arrowhead again. Fantastic. I mean, one of these years they're going to lose an Arrowhead, and if the right team shows up, maybe it's Lamar this year. That'd be great for him. I would not rule out the Bills going to Arrowhead and beating them this year. I really wouldn't. I think the Bills are one of those teams that could do that.
Let me say, lose an Arrowhead again. Sorry.
Yeah, because of the Bengals.
Bengals and Patriots.
From that standpoint, I would say Chiefs and Packers. The problem with the NFC, Luka, it's like there's 2 teams you can really say, like Packers, Niners. I guess you could say the Lions. I don't believe in what the Eagles. They looked like they just fell off the rails last year. I can't say Cowboys. So I'm going to go Chiefs over Packers. All of this just reminds me, just get in, Bills. Just get in. Because there is not a super team in the AFC. There's not a super team in the whole league. And just because I don't have you win in the East, yes, you can beat Aaron Rodgers at 42 years old in the playoffs. Yes, you can beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs in Arrowhead. You've done it before, if not for the biggest coaching blunder in Bills history. So get in.
Yeah, just get in. I will say to your Eagles thing, though, we're going off here, so we're going to be ending soon. But the Eagles situation, it's like, I don't know what it is. That felt like the most fake collapse of all time. You're too damn talented
Yeah.
You are too damn talented for something like that to happen. And it's embarrassing. All you've heard about all offseason is how embarrassing that was. And then, oh, I get the health concerns, but oh, you just go and get Saquon Barkley. You somehow scoop up a I'm not the biggest Jahan Dotson fan, but just adding him to the mix where you already had AJ Brown and Devonta Smith out there, it's like where's the point of you not hitting 12 wins? Because by the way, the Cowboys are kind of sitting on their hands and just finally paid CD, but I
Speaking
don't
of teams
know.
with easy paths to the division, like unless you believe in the Cowboys, which I don't,
Nope.
the Giants are.
Yeah, like the Commanders might be fun to watch at times, but say what you want about Jaden Daniels. I'm not his biggest fan. Yeah, I used to be, but I'm not anymore. And their receiver room is a gut shell of itself, and I don't know.
The Commanders feel like a team that they're going the right direction, but they need one more offseason.
Yeah, one or two. Yeah,
but they're going in the right direction. I kind of feel that way about the Bears, but I figure like in the NFC they can sneak in.
Yeah.
All starts this week.
Hell yeah.
All right, Luka. What would be a more painful playoff loss for the Bills? Texans, Jets, Dolphins, Chiefs.
Ooh. It's not Chiefs, it's not Texans. It's got to be a divisional loss. It has to.
It's got to be the Dolphins then, right? Because
it's got to be the Dolphins. Because here's the ultimate thing. You even said it at one point earlier on in this episode. We've always used the Josh Allen is daddy to the Dolphins. And we always at least dominate the Dolphins. When it matters the most, we beat the Dolphins. The ultimate trump card, Josh, is, well, we beat you in the playoffs. We ended your season. We sent you golfing and packing. Like that is the ultimate, just like you can talk about all of your regular season wins. You can talk about all your regular season accolades. We sent you home when it mattered. Finally, when we had that matchup, the last time that matchup happened, I don't actually know if it was the last time for sure, but it feels like the last time when it mattered was that one you referred to back in 92.
Oh, no. It's because it was so forgettable. Skylar Thompson.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. God. Yeah, that was a forgettable game, even though it was actually a bad game for the Bills.
Oh, my gosh. We've ever been so mad about winning a playoff game?
Yeah. Sorry. Forgot about that one. But with your ones, okay, that's a fake one, too. It's not even Tua. It's not. Yeah. With your ones actually being able to beat us, it's like that. You can't have that. If Aaron Rodgers, especially in your scenario, Josh, the Jets win the division, it feels like it might be one of their years. Then we have to go there and play them again, and they just beat us again. That's not going to feel embarrassing. It's going to be like, it feels like their year. It's Aaron Rodgers at 40 plus. They're all playing with their kind of like their careers on the line, not literally for all the players, but like Rodgers, Robert Saleh, all these guys that matter. It's like they're playing for their careers because, I mean, how much longer is Aaron Rodgers playing, so on and so forth. So yeah, I can't say that the Jets would be that one. Just like the pressure question you asked earlier, it's like, no, it's the Dolphins. The Dolphins would be the most embarrassing way to do it.
Losing to the Chiefs again is just like at this point, add another one to the pile.
I just add it to the pile. Yeah. it's like just like burning books.
It's like losing to the Patriots during the drought. It's like, does it really matter at this point? They got this.
It's what makes the win even more sweeter. Whenever that comes.
Will the Bills beat the Chiefs in a playoff game in Josh Allen's career with
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes starting?
Yes.
I agree.
Yes. Yeah, it's not about if, it's when, but realistically, I mean, we would all like it to be sooner rather than later, but it will happen. It will happen. I'll leave it there.
All right, Luka, this was fun. We both wanted to go 90 minutes. We have gone 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Yep.
The next time you hear from Luka and me together will be Bills Cardinals post game. Now, Luka and I have some individual things coming up this week. The return of Luka's Locks, where Luka will give you some betting advice for free on our YouTube channel to let you know who to put the bread on this week, because week 1 is tricky, Luka. You never know what's going to happen. Luka will help you navigate some of these tricky waters of week 1. I will give some week 1 predictions later in the week. and then just enjoy it, man. It's football season, and every Sunday from here on out, it is football Sunday. So for Luka, I am Josh McCarty. This has been our season preview show. We will talk to you next week on Bills Chat post game edition.